Hello everyone, and welcome to the beautiful Bass Pro Shops outdoor world here in Auburn, New York. We've got a great show for you today. You're going to want to get your notepads ready. Today I'm going to show you just how effective a big worm can be when you get it to stand up off the bottom. It's today's In Depth. Then Aunt Defoe teaches us about an overlooked resource in tournament winning bass. It's boat ramps. You don't want to miss Bass School 101. But first, Stacy King is here to show us the top 5 lures in the King's Tackle Box in this week's Fishing in 5.
Here's a challenge for you. If you could only have 5 baits in your tackle box, what would they be? I'm going to give you my opinion. First, it's going to be a plastic worm. Worms have been great forever and you got to have them. Second would be a jig. A jig is a big bass bait. You got to know how to fish a jig. Third's a spinnerbait. Got to have spinnerbaits that catch fish everywhere you can go. Fourth is a little shallow running crankbait. You've got to have a little crankbait in your lineup. And last but not least is a little popper type topwater. They're easy to use and they catch lots of bass. If I could only pick 5, these are the 5 I'd pick. Number 1, a plastic worm. My choice for a plastic worm is a 6-inch green pumpkin straight tail worm. This is just a good choice for me year-round all over the country. I love lots of other worms. Heck, I fish big old 14, 15, 16-inch worms. I fish little old bitty 3 and 4-inch finesse worms. But that particular one right there is one that I would choose if I could only have one worm to fish with. I fish it on a Texas rig and I fish it on a shaky head, and it's just a great worm to catch bass with. You have to understand that a worm like this is a tool. It's something that you have to go out and you have to practice with it and fish it, and once you learn how to fish it, you're going to catch a lot of bass on it. Number 2, a jig. You know, a jig is a big bass bait. I love to fish them. You can also catch numbers on a jig, and my favorite model would be a 1/2 ounce pointed nose jig like this one, because you can fish a 1/2 ounce shallow. You can also fish it pretty deep, and I like the pointed nose because it comes through cover, wood, grass, rocks, whatever. I like a good sharp casting style hook, one that's strong, and you can get good penetration with it if you are fishing deep. As far as trailers go, I just use a little crawfish, double tail trailer like this one, or a straight crawfish trailer, either one. I stick with the natural crawfish looking colors. Another reason why a jig's in my top 5 is that you can fish it in clear or dirty water. And a jig displaces water, it moves it, and it's just like a crawfish actually moving along the bottom, and that's why bass bite it. My third choice would be a spinnerbait, 3/8 ounce, and I would use about a number 4 gold willow leaf with a little nickel Colorado in front of it with a chartreuse and white skirt, because that particular color combination works good in all colors of water. You can fish that bait shallow, you can count it down as deep as you want to, and think about this, a spinnerbait is easy to fish. Basically, you just throw it out there and wind it in. There's lots of ways you can improve upon the retrieves and change your retrieve method to make it more effective, but it's not hard to fish a spinnerbait, and it certainly catches good fish. Another neat thing about a spinnerbait is you can fish that thing as shallow as you want it. You can wake it right up on the surface. Just bring it up here on top and wake it in like this, and boy, sometimes they'll just come up and slam it. There's one right at the boat. That one wanted it right on top, right next to the boat. Remember, if you can only have 5 baits in your tackle box, this spinnerbait's got to be one of them. My fourth choice would be a small crankbait like this one. This little old bait runs 4 or 5 feet deep, and it's just an excellent choice because it really imitates the bait fish. A lot of people think these little baits hang up real bad because they got 2 big old treble hooks on them. But in reality, the way this bill's shaped, it'll come up against a piece of cover and pop right over it and not hang too badly at all. And that's what makes them an effective fish catcher, because when they pop off that stuff or go near to a piece of cover, that's when that bass is going to run out there and grab it. There he is. Little feller. Another reason why I like these small crankbaits like this, it's just the ease of use. I just love fishing these little shallow crankbaits, and a little shad type bait like this is so effective in so many different situations. That's one of the reasons that if I only had one crankbait to choose, it would be one like this, because you can catch bass on it all the time. It's small, it's a lot like the size of the bait fish that most bass like to feed on. Makes a rattling vibration, you know, and it's good in a lot of different water temperatures, from hot weather, and you can fish it in cold weather too. This bait needs to be in your tackle box. And number 5, a topwater lure. There's lots of good topwater baits on the market, and I love to fish them all. Oh, there he is, he busted it. There's not really a wrong way to fish a little popper like that. That's one reason why I added in those 5 special baits, because anybody can throw one. There's several different ways to fish it. You can chug it, you can make it spit, you can bloop it. It's just all in a matter of your wrist, twitching it and making that thing pop, and it represents an injured bait fish on top of the water. And that's just a perfect size right there for a big old bass to come up and get. So don't forget to put a popper type topwater in your 5 choices for lures. Don't be caught without these 5 baits, because you're certainly not going to be catching all the bass you could be.
Big worms have long been the go-to lure for bass fishermen for years. Today I'm going to show you how I get them to stand out by getting them to stand up as we go in depth. One of my favorite things to do is actually hunting for these schools. You know, it's along the lines of hunting. You know, the catching's fun, don't get me wrong, when you got those big bass shaking, trying to get off, but it's really cool to me to get out and hunt these schools. And, you know, using your electronics and learning what to look for really eliminates a lot of time. I mean, we've pulled up on a spot here that's normally really good, but let's face it, they're not on it right now. You know, I'm seeing a few fish just scattered out here and there, but nothing really that makes me want to stop and fish this spot. So what we'll do, we'll just move on to the next one and keep looking until we see them. And when we find them, we're gonna have some fun. Now this is a good school. The right size, you can tell by the size of the bumps on the bottom. One thing I like to do when I'm islanding these places is always think in terms of going from deep to shallow as the current hits it. You know, just a little rise going from 26 up to 22, 23. And then you get that white line on the down vision, and that's really where you're gonna start seeing those fish. You can see there's a few small ones here. All right, now we're starting to get into a few bigger fish. You can tell there's a school here. There's some shad up above it with fish down on the bottom. And when they're down on the bottom, that's where you've got bass. All right, we're starting to see them now. These are bigger fish here too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now this is what you wanna see. There we go. Oh yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one right there. Oh yes. Man, I love graphing them and seeing them. Come here. Sweet. Man, that's pretty. Get out early in the morning, pull up, graph them up. This is what I like about this hook. Look at that big bike hook on that big worm. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Let's get this one back in. Sweet. When I'm working this big 10-inch worm, this is a Bass Pro Shops 10-inch ribbon tail worm, and green pumpkin is just an all-around great color. You know, I like it in clear water, I like it in stained water, and we've got a good neutral color here. It's got a little bit of flake in it. It's got some purple flake in it. That's why it's called green pumpkin violet. And you know, a lot of times you get something that stands out and it's going to trigger those strikes. I hear a lot of people talk about colors and what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of times it's not just the base color, it's what color flake is in that worm. You know, I know we were down in Florida several years ago and red shad was a big color. And if you didn't have that green flake in it, you didn't get near the bites. And there's something that triggers those strikes, you know, that those bass see and really gets them in an aggressive mode. But the key to this worm is this head turner stand-up jig head. But now what this lure does, because of the way the head is designed at the bottom, it's a big flat pie shaped, and it sets on the bottom and it creates this worm to stand straight up. And it really allows the bass to find it when it's in that cover and along the bottom. It's gonna get you a lot of strikes. Let's get another one. That's it. Oh, I thought that was brush. That's a fish. This is a big one. When you get on these fish, a lot of times they're just some giants sitting up on these places. Ooh. I like to really keep my hand on the thumb bar, and that way if one runs like that, And that is a good one right there. Sweet. You know, we get the school firing. See that big hook, that big 6/0 hook? That is the deal. Hey, I like it. Very nice cast. You know, we're gonna have to obviously get another worm and tore this. But you know, most of the time where you get a worm to tear is right here in the hook. And had that not torn, you can see we'd still be able to use that. But man, you can save a lot of money with this rig because it doesn't tear up here where you have problems rigging it. I really like how I get so many ideas from Kevin and Edwin and Stacy. You know, we're competitive out on tour, but one thing we enjoy is sharing secrets about how to catch them. And this rig that Edwin came up with, it really catches them. Fishing a big worm has been a big part of my tournament success throughout the years. I've used it all over the country, in California, Texas, Florida, even in the Northeast. And one thing I've found, no matter which way you use it, it's gonna catch big fish. I fished it with the Carolina rig, flipping heavy grass, even Carolina rigging through brush piles. But I'm gonna tell you, this new technique of taking a big worm and allowing it to stand up off the bottom is gonna allow these bass to find it like never before. Let's get back out on the water. There they are. There they are right there. This is a real cool spot. What is down there? What's holding those bass? What this is a big mussel shell bed. You know, you can really feel them. Those mussel shells sit down there open. As they sit down there, they're filtering the water, waiting on microorganisms or whatever it may be to come through, and then they shut down and feed on them. These mussel shells are really holding these bass. They're schooled up, and they're being able to locate this worm we're fishing because of this stand-up head. I knew it, I knew it. Oh yeah. Boy, look how wide he was down there, deep. Sweet. Oh, what a giant. That was a big one. Let's get another worm. You know, you see so many people buy 4-inch worms, 6-inch worms. But I'm gonna tell you, you wanna catch a big fish, get you a 10-inch worm. That's the reason I fish big lures, right there. A bass wants to eat something big that is that size. Man, you'll fish all summer and not catch one that big. That is a giant. Sweet. Oh yeah. I know I'm right in the middle of them, and I know they're looking at it. I've got that in my mind that they're looking at that worm. There he is. There we go. It's another big one. It's another big one. Sweet. Sweet. I love it, I love it, I love it. These are some big ones. I mean, big ones. Taking a look at our setup, what we've got is a high-speed 7:1 gear ratio loose reel. We've got it on a ducket rod. This is a 7/6 heavy action rod. I really like a longer rod, heavy action, so I can make those hook sets. And then we've got it on a 10-inch Tournament Series Bass Pro Shops worm. This color is called Green Pumpkin Violet. It's your basic green pumpkin with a little bit of a purple flake in there. Now I want to show you how we've got this rigged. We've got this on a Swampers Edwin Evers head turner jig head. This is a 3/4 ounce jig head with a 6/0 hook. I really like the big hook anytime you're fishing a big worm. This Tournament Series Bass Pro Shops worm is phenomenal. It's been one of my favorite for years. It's really got the right texture to it and the right softness to it to be able to set the hook with those fish. I want to take you guys through with how we rig it. Simply put pressure on that spring and then just start turning it. And it'll screw up on there, but I'll go all the way with it. Get it to where it's really snug and tight up against that head, and then just simply T-expose it. Pull up, give a little slack, and make sure it's straight. You see how that's perfectly straight on there? That's really gonna keep it from twisting as you reel your lure back in, and it's gonna fish perfectly for you. You know, the reel and rod setup is real important. You know, a 7/6 gives me really an application to do two things. I've got a long rod that I can really make a long cast. And then when my line's out there and I set the hook, I've really got a lot of tension to be able to reel up and get the proper hook set that I need. A 7:1 gear ratio is always what you want. High speed when fishing offshore, unless you're deep cranking. If you're deep cranking, maybe you don't want it that fast. That really allows you to take up a lot of line when you set the hook. Also, if a fish starts coming up to the surface, you can catch up with it real fast and keep a tight line on them. You know, we were using 18-pound shooter fluorocarbon. I like the fluorocarbon. It really allows me to feel the fish a lot better, and it allows me to feel that bottom. When I got in those mussel shells, I could really slow this lure down, even bring it to a stop, and it's standing up with that tail just moving around, and boom, that's when we would get those strikes. I'm gonna tell you, we're on a spot here that gets fished a lot. I mean, these community holes are community holes because they're good. They hold a lot of fish, but a lot of times, the tough thing is making them bite, being able to get a bite. They get so educated, seeing a lot of the same lures. That's why you see trends come out like the Alabama rig and when the Carolina rig came out. And they work because it's different. These fish are seeing something different. There we go. Oh yeah. Coming up. Oh, look at this one. Oh, this is a giant. This is a giant. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding? Oh my goodness. Get in here, get in here. Oh, look at that. That's an 8-pounder. Hey, that is the way they're supposed to be built right there. That is an absolute giant. And a lot of people get intimidated to get into fishing for the first time. I can tell you, you know, when you go into a Bass Pro store, look for those people in the green uniforms. They're knowledgeable. They've been taught what to talk about. Most of them fish. You know, they can tell you this is what's hot on the lake at a given time. Go in, have those conversations. You know, that's to me is a fun part of the shopping. Sometimes I get my fix just from going in talking fishing, but you know, they can really help you get lined up on your given lake on what you need to go out and be successful.
Anytime you're around rock, you need to be very conscious of continuing to check those points, because it don't take many of those rocks hitting to just bend the point over or to just dull them, and that can simply cost you fish. Losing fish is not bad luck. If you use that as an excuse, it's a poor one. Losing fish is negligence for 99% of them. Something's wrong. It's either mechanics or it's equipment. Something like that is causing it that you have to correct.
Boat ramps are obviously a place for us to load and launch our boats. They can also be a place to come in and have lunch. But did you know they can be that last-minute stop to catch a tournament-winning bass? Today, Ott Defoe shows us how to do that in Bass School 101.
A couple things that make boat ramps, you know, a very key piece of structure is the fact that it's a bottom composition change. You've got places where it can be a mud bank, then you've got chunk rock down the side of a boat ramp, a real hard concrete surface, chunk rock again, and then mud on the other side. Other lakes, it may be gravel, maybe clay, but whatever it is, it's going to be a bottom composition change. I've never fished a lake that was solid concrete all the way around. So it's going to be a harder bottom and a composition change, which is key on any lake I've ever fished. If they're a very defined one, they actually make their own point. But the nice thing about whenever you have a boat ramp that's like that, it has very sharp edges on it most of the time. So it really gives those fish a nice break, a nice defined edge to hang on and use as cover, and then they'll use those slick concrete places as actually feeding areas. So they'll use the sides is where they sit most of the time, but whenever a school of bait fish goes across the middle, that's where they're going to go to eat them. All boat ramps are not created equal by any means. You know, some that sit out on points more on the main lake a lot of times where they get a lot of wave action will actually get a lot of siltation, maybe gravel that's washed up on them. A ramp like this one that's gotten a lot of wave action has actually gotten covered up by silt. So it's not got that really great transition that a clean ramp would. Me personally, I would pass up one like this in favor of one that's much cleaner. Whenever you're fishing a boat ramp, a lot of times the very end of it, the very deepest part where it drops off can be very good. If you find those that are in the depth range that fish are holding in, man, you can really find a school of fish a lot of times out on the very ends of those ramps. You have to use your depth finder. For me, my Humminbird side imaging helps me see those places, helps me see where they're at, and even see if there's fish on them. But being able to find the very end of it to fish your bait off of is very, very important. Man, I know that if you'll take the tips and the information that I've given you today about fishing boat ramps, it will improve your fishing, no doubt about it.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the granddaddy of all outdoor stores. This is the Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World in Springfield, Missouri. We've got a jam-packed show for you today, so let's get right to it. Today, Brian Snowden takes us to Central Arkansas. He starts with a basic chatterbait, but after several modifications, he turns this lure into a deadly presentation. That's today's in-depth. Then, fishing in the wind, as hard as it may be, is something you have to take advantage of. Today, Tim Horton's going to take us to school in the wind. That's our Bass School 101. But first, you know they're fishing a certain zone in the water, but what if they just won't bite? Today, Ott Defo is going to let us know 3 lures that'll make it happen in that zone. That's today's Fishing in 5.
What I want to help you understand today is the intricacies and the differences between a swim jig, a chatterbait, and a spinnerbait. They're all 3 similar. You know, they're all skirted baits with a lead top head to them. A couple of them have blades, the swim jig doesn't. But what I really want to show you when to use them, where to use them, how to use them, and most importantly, why you choose one over the other. That's what we're covering today. And also post-spawn, whenever the shad actually starts spawning, that is a prime time to catch them on a spinnerbait. The biggest bag of bass I ever weighed in a Bassmaster Elite Series tournament came on a spinnerbait during a shad spawn down on Falcon Lake. Had 30 pounds and 15 ounces, all on a Terminator spinnerbait. Then the swim jig. This is something that you don't hear about in some areas that much, in other areas it's all you hear about. But a swim jig is definitely good, especially around shallow vegetation. I don't really throw one that much in open water, but it would surprise you how many bass you can catch with them just winding the jig down rocky banks. But a swim jig around grass, it comes through that stuff so well, and you can fish it in places that you can't fish a chatterbait or spinnerbait. That's the biggest advantage of a swim jig. This area here, it's where the main channel meets a backwater. It's got a real hard current seam, and that for me is a prime place for a spinnerbait or a chatterbait. Not so much the swim jig. The swim jig, whenever you're fishing it around current, it kind of gets lost in it, almost blown away, and I think just kind of tossed around like a piece of trash would be in that current. So for me, if I'm fishing around current, a spinnerbait or a chatterbait, something that makes vibration, that's what I want to be using. There we go. There's a spinnerbait fish. Come here, buddy. There's a nice spinnerbait fish there. That's a good chunky one. Man, that's a nice pretty fish there. Back in the water. That fish there was right on the edge of a current seam, a prime place for a spinnerbait fish. I love fishing a spinnerbait or a chatterbait, something that's making vibration. That's what you want to use whenever you're fishing around current. Come here, fish. Man, he smoked that chatterbait. Come here, buddy. There we go, that's a nice one there. That's the kind we're looking for. Let's get you back in the water, buddy. See ya. That fish there, man, it ate my chatterbait right out here, out next to the boat, out in some little shallow grass. For me, a chatterbait, compared to the other baits that I'm talking about today, a spinnerbait and a swim jig, it's a little bit more 4 seasons for me, I'm gonna say. I like this thing from early pre-spawn when the water's even in the low 40s, through the spawn, post-spawn, summertime, fall, anytime bass are shallow, I'll catch them on a chatterbait. There we go. Yeah, here we go. Man, that fish hit it right up on the bank, buddy. Come right on up here. He clocked it right up on the bank. See you, buddy. On these 3 baits here, you know what I've got a spinnerbait, a chatterbait, and a swim jig. To me, the spinnerbait is really the most original of this. It's been around for many, many years, and it's one of the original shallow water kind of heavy cover tools that we had, you know, everybody used growing up fishing. An amazing fish catcher. It's actually gotten a little bit less attention recently just due to new baits such as a chatterbait. This thing here, man, it's come on the scene and it's really, really a great bait. And the last of these is the swim jig. You can take almost any old jig and throw it out and wind it in and call it a swim jig, but to really have a good one, you want to make sure that you have one that's balanced, that swims good in the water. But a swim jig is another extremely effective tool for that 0 to 5 foot range. And anytime you're fishing around any amount of cover, sure, you can throw it in open water, but you can also throw a swim jig in places. It's almost like a 4-wheel drive truck. You can take it anywhere you want to go.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Man, he hit it real close to the boat. He's just right there, buddy. Get the pretty markings on that fish. Right down there, buddy. See ya. I hope I've shown you today just how to fish each of these 3 types of baits effectively. You know, they each fish that same piece of water column, the 0 to 5 feet, but each one of them has their own qualities and situations that make each one of them very, very important in your tackle box.
For Brian Snowden, using the chatterbait right out of the package just doesn't cut it. He's got several modifications that you're going to want to add to your arsenal. That's today's in-depth.
Here's one. Oh, yeah. Well, it's early in the morning and we've got a front coming in. It's early in spring. The water temperature is warming to about 55 to 58 degrees. And we've got a front pushing in, pretty strong winds, mainly out of the west, northwest. And we're here fishing a chatterbait. The water's got a little bit of stain to it and the fish are moving around, getting ready to spawn, but not quite there yet. We're going to be fishing some different types of vegetation, some shallow grass, pad stems, as well as some actual rocks. So we're going to mix it up with a few different things. You know, it's dark this morning, so I've decided to start with a black and blue chatterbait, and we're going to see what happens. We're going to start out on some vegetation with a mixture of vegetation, pad stems, and some rocks. What we're using is just a swimming fluke. It's got a little paddle tail. It moves a little bit of water with that paddle tail, but the original chatterbaits don't have a keeper. So, you know, I'll add that on there. Just take a clothespin, some thread, tie it on there, a little super glue. But this will hold everything in place once you get it up on there. And what that does, gives you a bait. But as that blade moves back and forth, it causes the whole bait to shake, and that tail will just move and dance in the water. Wow, I came through that, hit that rock. She really loaded up on that chatterbait. You know, I didn't even get a chance to pop it through and she grabbed it. Oh, I knew she was a big fish. She was pulling really hard. And then she jumps, you know, she comes up and wallers around. Yeah, she must be 6 pounds, 6.5. This is a nice one. Great pre-spawn fish. Beautiful, look at that. Just moving up, starting to make the nest. Look at the color on that fish. Beautiful. This is going to be a great day. We've got a bite already, and this chatterbait's going to be able to cover some water in this wind and really catch some nice fish today. That's exciting in the first one of the day. This is a chatterbait, and this is what we're going to be using mainly today. It's hasn't been around a long time. It's kind of a unique bait. It's a combination of a jig, spinnerbait, and even I'd say it kind of leans toward a square bill crankbait because it sends off a lot of vibration. We've got this nice flat blade that actually vibrates, but you can change the size. You know, you can go from 1/4 all the way up to a 3/4, so you can fish it in a variety of depths like you would a crankbait. But it's got a neat action in the water, kind of moves side to side. We've got, they come in a variety of colors. We've got some stain to the water, overcast skies this morning, so we're using a little darker bait. What I like to do is I'll just use this bait around vegetation, rocks, boat docks, anything like that I'm going to be using to try and target those pre-spawn bass as they move up into those spawning locations. And this bait works well in clear water as well as off-colored to muddy water, So it's very versatile bait, and we're going to use it a lot in different types of environments today, so stick around. Oh my gosh, I think I've got a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. Number 2, this is a big one. Oh my goodness, look at this fish. Oh, it's got to be over 7 pounds. I just can't believe it. 2 big fish in one day. Man, this is awesome. Oh my. Well, this sure is a pretty fish. Long, just moving up out of deep water to get ready to spawn. You can see her tail starting to make a little nest, getting ready to spawn. The water's about 57 degrees. She's probably up looking around, ready for the spring spawn. What a beautiful fish. I'm gonna let her go. Hopefully she'll produce another fish just like this. As you can see, the chatterbait's really versatile. We caught a few nice fish early in grass and pad stems. Now we've moved over to the rocks and just caught another nice quality bass on a chatterbait. Chatterbaits come in a wide variety of colors, sizes, and blade combinations. Some of the basic ones that you're gonna need to have are like this one, a white one with a nickel blade. You know, I'm gonna use this in stained to clear water. Really mimics a shad real well. You can adjust your blade combination if the water gets a little color, put on a gold blade. If you're fishing real clear water and don't want a lot of flash, they make them with black. One of my favorite baits, because I use this a lot in clear water around table rock, is a green pumpkin chatterbait. I like the black blade because it eliminates some of that flash. And I'm gonna put something like a speed shad on here. This is a Bass Pro Speed shad, or you know, a Zoom swimming fluke. Excellent choices for these baits. They got a little bit of movement, but not a whole lot. Great for that clear water environment. And this is one of the best colors. It's just black and blue. It works in a variety of different conditions, you know. I use this one a lot when they've got overcast skies. I'm gonna adjust the blade combination based on the watercolor and the amount of light that's penetrating that water. And you know what I like to use? I'll use a Zoom Speed Craw or Super Speed Craw. Just kind of looks like a crawfish moving along the bottom. These arms kick a little bit. Gives it a great slender profile with just a little bit of movement.
Bladed swim jigs like Brian's throwing today can be deadly effective. I think it's the extra vibration that they give off that really sets the bass off. One of the things that I like to do is always fish them around heavy cover. It seems like that vibration when the bass is in that thicker cover just drives them crazy. That's when a swim jig can be at its best.
What I like to do is, you know, usually in the morning when that water's still a little cool in the pre-spawn like we have now, I'm going to fish that outside edge a little more. And as the conditions change later in the day and the temperature warms up a few degrees, those fish will really move up to that inside edge in between the rocks and that inside grass line. And you know, that's what we're hoping today. We've got a front coming in, so I don't know how much sun we're going to get to warm this water up. So we're just going to have to see where those fish stay. But make sure you try different things, because those fish with that chatterbait are not always going to be in the same place throughout the day. You know, they may be on the outside edge in the morning when the water's cool, and as that water warms, they'll move to the inside edge as it warms up 1 or 2 degrees. And that's basically what we're going to keep trying is you know, rock changes with grass, as well as pad stems, and even some just barren rocks, secondary points, and things of that nature with some isolated stumps on them. Oh man, here's another one on the outside edge. You know, we're fishing a road, a little steeper of a drop off, so I'm having to slow that bait down, but boy, if I can get it out there in 4 or 5 feet and then tick that grass and pop it loose, they seem to be really liking that technique. Another pre-spawn bass off the rocks, so I think we're putting together a little pattern here. We're throwing this chatterbait on some wind-blown rocks. Got a little bit of grass mixed in on the rocks, so this looks like a little male. Moving up, get ready to spawn. Love to have these size in my tournaments, that's for sure. Equipment for this bait, you know, I really like to use a 6/8 to 7/1 medium heavy casting rod, mainly bait caster. I use a St. Croix Legend Tournament 7/1 medium heavy with the Johnny Moore Signature Series reel. Use a medium gear ratio, 6:4 to 1 should be sufficient, because a lot of times you're going to be reeling it medium to fast, and then you're also going to be creeping along like we're doing today. So I use that mid-range 6:4 to 1 gear ratio. Today I'm using fluorocarbon. You can also use braid if you're fishing real thick, heavy grass, but I really like fluorocarbon. You know, I can control the bait very well. Low stretch like the SPX fluorocarbon, I can feel that bait moving, and that's one of the key things is, you know, just keep that bait where you can feel it vibrating the end of your rod, and it's really going to put off some vibration. You're going to see your rod moving, and you're going to feel it with that fluorocarbon line. And most of the time I'm going to use as light as 12, but mainly 17 and 20 pound line because you're going to be throwing this chatterbait around a lot of stuff. It's going to definitely need that strength. Oh man, here's another good quality fish, just a couple 100 yards down the bank. Yeah, they're definitely keying in on that outside grass line. I popped that loose and oh, it grabbed a hold of it. What a great strike that was. I mean, he got it. Another good quality keeper bass on the rocks with the chatterbait. I think this afternoon, you know, the sun's came out, warmed the water up a degree or two, starting to get a little more active, getting some more bites. One of the advantages to the chatterbait is you can fish it slow, medium, or fast. You can cover a lot of different water depths. And as you can see today, the wind has been howling. I mean, 25 miles an hour constant. And I could still creep that bait along and move it down where I needed it to tick the top of that pad stems or the grass. And then I could speed it up when I had to, when the wind started really pushing me. And what I like to do, you know, when I'm fishing the wind, is use it as your advantage. You know, fish those banks that got the wind on it, but don't try and go against it. Most of the time when it gets up in the 20, 25 mile an hour, you're better off going with it. I just use a trolling motor to help slow me down, and that's what I was doing most of the day when I caught those big fish. Allowing that wind to keep me moving and using that chatterbait to control the depth based on how quick I was moving the boat, as well as how fast I was retrieving it. So it would allow me to still tick the top of the grass and cover that water very effectively, which a lot of other baits wouldn't allow you to do in that kind of wind. Here's one. Oh, yeah. The great thing about this pattern is, man, I was looking on the map and there's a lot of places that really match up to this. You know, there's roads, miles and miles of roads, train trestles, other places that have riprap rock on them. If we can get this pattern to work, I think we'll be able to duplicate it all over the lake because there's enough places to move around and work that bait. Another great pre-spawn bass. Look at the spots on that fish. Really healthy, fat. Just moving up, start looking for a place to spawn. She's definitely getting ready to. Let's let her go. Well, as you can see today, the chatterbait has been very productive. It's a versatile bait that allows you to cover water thoroughly from all depths. You can fish it shallow, deep, you can fish it in clear water, stained to muddy water. Just vary the blade combinations and your color choices depending on what conditions you're fishing, and you're gonna have success just like this with a chatterbait. It's a proven bait, it wins lots of tournaments, catches lots of big fish, so make sure you put some chatterbaits in your box, because I guarantee you're gonna like fishing them.
One of those things that I think is often overlooked is somebody's trolling motor prop. And what I'm talking about is when your trolling motor prop gets all beat up and banged up, it doesn't perform as well. It has an interference with your depth finder, and it causes your trolling motor to be a lot more noisy when you're fishing. And it also can cause a disturbance on your electronics through your transducer. That extra vibration in that prop is gonna cause a disturbance. So put your brand new one on once those things get dinged up. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Windy conditions are one of the best times to be out there to fish. The most important thing though is making sure you have your boat positioned properly and you stay safe. Today Tim Horton's going to show us just how to do that in Bass School 101.
When you get a windy day like today, it really changes up lures that become productive and lures that become unproductive. You know, you want to give yourself as much advantage as you can. And let's face it, you know, we got wind and we also got clouds today. So what that's gonna do, I'm gonna pick lures that I can actually move and move at a steady pace. That's not gonna hinder me by fishing in the wind. You know, I've got this 3/4 ounce spinnerbait making long casts here over this grass flat. And a spinnerbait is probably the best lure to fish on a windy day. A couple of reasons for that. You know, when the surface is getting broken up and a bass is looking up at a spinnerbait, it's really hard for him to hone in on it as opposed to a clear, calm day. They can really see every aspect of it. So it just looks like a cloud of bait fish coming through there when you're throwing a spinnerbait. All of those blades are really getting broke up, and it just creates an action on the surface that the fish really like. You know, if you've ever been under a swimming pool and it's wavy, you know how distorted it is looking out, as opposed to if it's calm, you can see almost perfectly out. And that's the same appearance that a bass has. You know, when it's looking up at this lure, coming across the surface, you know, it's jumping, it's moving around with that wave action, and they can't get a good look on it, and they're a lot more likely to attack it. One thing to really pay attention to is the weather forecast. You know, if you've got wind, a lot of times that can mean unstable weather. You don't want to be out when you've got chances of tornadoes or excessive winds. You know, watch out for lake wind advisories. If you get days like that, don't go to big bodies of water. You can really get into some trouble. You know, when you get up to wind speeds of over 20, 30 miles an hour, you really need to watch out. You know, you can get in trouble on a body of water and knowing how to navigate in a boat. You know, this Nitro Z9 is as good as it gets for a bass boat taking on big water. But when you get on massive bodies of water, it can really be intimidating trying to run out in open water like that. So really be smart. When you're wanting to get out and you're going fishing and it's a windy day, you can catch fish, but be smart about it. Also be on the lookout for fronts that may have lightning or thunderstorms or even tornadic activity. Those are the days you just need to stay at home and watch the Bass Pros. Hey y'all, welcome to the gorgeous Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World here in Auburn, New York. We got a lot of great information today, so let's get started. Today, Ott Defoe takes us on a journey of discovery, and he's smack dab in the middle of the spawn. Ott's gonna light him up in today's In Depth. Then Brian Snowden shows us how to catch ultra shallow smallmouth even in the summertime. You don't want to miss Bass School 101. But first, Stacy King brings out his old school paper maps to show us how to study a time-tested resource. Here comes Fishing in 5.
Today I'm going to talk about one of the most important tools that's overlooked a lot with all the fancy electronics we've got. It's a paper map. Do you really know how to read one? One of the most important things in locating and catching bass are things that I may have missed in the past. You know, the key to understanding a map is understanding the legend. A lot of folks think that just studying the contour lines on the map is all they need to do. But really the most important feature on your whole map is the legend. And that just tells you what all the symbols on the whole map mean. Because the legend, each symbol on legend tells you something different about what's on the map. Let's put the symbols on this legend to work. A lot of the symbols apply to good fishing areas, and I'm going to show you what I mean right here. You see a symbol for rock. That should be good. You also have gravel, you've got clay, you've got deadfalls. Here's one, stumps and snags. Down here you've got the flooded timber. That's going to be an excellent one. And down here you've got a marina sign. You've got one called riprap. That's where they put a lot of big chunk rocks like on the face of the dam or where there's a road going by the water. So those are all good areas that you can potentially find fish in. Here I'll show you where a few of these symbols on the legend come into play. You know, first the symbol for riprap is right here. So you go along the face of the dam, you've got a lot of riprap there. And you come on up this bank, it's a cliff or a bluff wall, and you've got those little red markers for standing timber. So that might be a good place to fish. You come across on this side and you see you've got a C, and that means a clay point, and it also has a navigational hazard out off of it. But if you're on a pattern where the bass are biting on clay points, you could look the night before and see, man, I'm going to hit all 4 or 5 of those. Those could be good ones. And if you cross the lake, you see the symbols that say R, R. That's for rock along that steep wall right there, so that'd be a good rocky bank at times. Come around here to this cove right around the corner and you see these G's. That means that's a gravel cove. That could be a great spawning cove right there, so during the spawning season, that'd certainly be a place I'd want to go look. Something you need to learn about contour lines is that the closer together they are, that means it's a steep bank. And when they're farther apart, that means it's flatter. Now all these little numbers you see here on these contours, that is the actual depth of the water when your lake is at normal power pool. 26 feet deep right there. You move out a little ways and it's 36 feet deep. So what you really need to understand that if the lake says 16 feet right here, the depth's 16, but if your lake's down 5 feet, it's really only going to be 11 feet deep there. A lot of times when you hear fishermen talk, they say, well, we caught a lot of nice bass today on that channel swing up there. Well, what is a channel swing? I'm going to show you right here. You see where this South Grand River, the old river comes across and swings in right against that bluff bank. That's what we call a channel swing right there. And if you go up the river, you'll see where that channel swings right in against that point. That's a channel swing. Go on up a little bit more, you see where that channel swings in against that bluff wall. That's a swing. You Come on up above the mouth of Tebow, and there's another great channel swing right there. You know, sometimes you hear guys say they're catching bass on main lake points, or maybe they're saying they're catching them on spinnerbaits on secondary points. Well, what does that really mean? If you get on this map and look, here's a big old cove right here. It comes out to the main lake, and here's a main lake point on this side, and here's a main lake point on this side. But if you come back in the cove where this boat ramp is, it's on a little point right in the back of the cove. That's what we call a secondary point right there. Here's another great example here in the Sugar Camp Hollow. Here's a main lake point right here on this side. You come back in, you've got a big secondary point right here. Go back a little farther, another secondary point. Then as you come out on the other side, you've got a main lake point here. Next, you know, one of my favorite places to fish on these lakes, and I find them on these topographical maps, are humps and underwater islands. This is a 6-foot underwater island or hump, you can call it either, and it's got deep water all the way around it. And if you pull up on a place like that and run your graph over it and you can find a few rocks or a brush pile, that's going to be a great place to catch some bass. Something else to remember, you know, they've got a scale on these maps that if you're going in a straight line, a mile is from here to here. But these mile markers that they have on the river channel here, that's a mile or going around a bend like this. So if you come down here and you look at the dam and you go up a mile, you see a +1, that's 1 mile. You go to +2, it's 2 miles, +3, 3. It's the same as you go up these other rivers. Well, there it is. I hope you folks have learned something. You know, maps can be kind of complicated, but there's an awful lot of good information in there that can really help you become a better fisherman.
During the spawn, bass become very protective of their nesting beds. They will not allow any shad or bait fish nearby. Today, Ott Defoe shows us how to take advantage of this situation with his favorite swim bait as we go in depth.
There we go. Man, that fish killed it right up by that little brush pile. Come on in here, buddy. That's actually a spotted bass there. Man, he crushed that swim bait right out by that tree. Come on back in the water, buddy. What we're doing today, we're fishing on a lake whenever the bass are spawning. This lake's got everything in it, largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass. And what I'm trying to do is tap into their aggressive side. You know, whenever smallmouth are spawning, they're very territorial. And a swim bait, like this Berkeley hollowbelly, is a great way to find them and a great way to catch them. But I use it more of a search bait to find out those areas where groups of smallmouth are spawning. Then I'll go back with something slower, maybe a shaky head, maybe a drop shot, and catch those fish. I just want to cover water. I want to see what kind of banks I'm going to get the most bites on. If they're on this slate type bottom, or if they're on more gravel, or if they're going to be in areas that have a lot of big chunky type of rocks. So we're just starting out today. I want to cover water with the swim bait, find out what type of places I really need to be keying in on. Then I'll go back to the shaky head or maybe a drop shot, possibly even a Carolina rig, to really fine tune those areas and try to catch as many as possible. Whoa. He bit it with that much line out. I pitched it what I thought was a bed, and I saw the fish just swim up and grab it. I mean, right at the boat. And actually, right there's the female. I'll go ahead and put this one back. But yeah, right there's the other one. What these fish are doing on these beds right now, they're on banks. They're not perfectly flat banks like what you have in some areas where fish spawn. These banks on this lake are just a little, they're sloping. I mean, it's a highland reservoir. This lake's pretty deep, so a lot of the banks have some drop to them. They've got a little bit of slope. Those fish are set up on those beds basically on the side of the bank is what you could imagine it being. That's where they're going to make their beds at. That gives them something to protect their babies once they hatch out, and just a place to feel secure. In clear water, when fish are spawning, a drop shot, it doesn't matter, largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, whatever. A drop shot is a very, very effective way to catch them, in clear water especially, whenever they're spawning. I honestly think it's because you can get it down in there. Your bait's constantly up off the bottom, and it never really has to move. You don't have to pull it out of that fish's bed to be able to just sit there and shake it right in his face and make him mad. That's a smallmouth. Come on up here, buddy. That fish was right by that pipe whenever he bit, right where I'd seen him. The acrobatical thing too. Come right on up here, buddy. There we go. Nice little smallmouth. That little drop shot hook sure gets them good. There we go. Right back in the water. See ya. That fish there, that's a prime example. I went by that pipe with my swim bait. It come up, it looked at it, and then it turned away and went off. That's kind of what some of those bites I'm getting are doing. But that fish there, I actually just visually saw it with my eyes. It never even touched my bait. I go back with the drop shot, pitch it in there, second pitch, I catch it. Nice one. Real nice one right there. Come here, buddy. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's a good one there. A telltale sign whenever fish are spawning. You can see that this fin right here, you can see how red it is. You know, their anal's usually red. Their tail fins have got some red on them. That's a telltale sign that you know fish are spawning. Even if you can't see them, you catch a fish that looks like that, about guarantee you there are fish spawning. See you, buddy. The deal that makes this pattern work is the defensiveness of the bass whenever they're spawning. Taking a bait that's big like this, it really makes them strike. You know, a lot of times you think about bed fishing, you think about something really slow, having to sit there, fish for a long time in front of a fish. Man, a lot of times I can cover a lot of water with a big bait like this, and I'll catch a lot of those fish. The ones I don't catch, they at least show themselves. They'll follow it, they'll come up, they'll nip at the bait. I've had a lot of them do that already today. But you end up catching a whole lot of them just by throwing a really big bait, and those fish can't stand it. They're too aggressive towards it, too defensive to that area. They're just gonna go ahead and eat it.
Just like deer hunting during the rut, bass fishing during the spawn can be some of the best fishing of the year. The reason for this is all the minnows and shad are trying to get into the nest and eat the eggs and fry that are there. Taking a swim bait and using it in these spawning flats is a phenomenal application. Let's see how Ott Defoe takes advantage of this time of year.
There we go. About you just take a big bait, reel it across those kind of places, cover a lot of water, and those fish will show themselves or do just what that one did there and eat it. Oh man, he missed it. Here he comes, here he comes. I saw him swim up, look at it, and then eat it. That was awesome right there. I mean, dude, that was like cool as it gets. Got a pretty little black spot on him. See you, buddy. That fish there, I come around the dock, I see a real white spot out there, I know it's a bed. I throw my Havoc sick fish over there across it, reel it up, and as soon as it hits the water, that fish swims towards it. I just keep winding, follows it a little bit, and just sucks it in. That's awesome right there. Here he comes. Right on up here, buddy. Yes. That fish there ate it real good. See you, buddy. That fish there was a little flat point. As I'm getting to it, I'd already made my cast, but I see a little dark spot out there. I know that that was a bed. I didn't even get my bait all the way to it, and that fish swam over and ate it. Where you at, shaky head? I saw that bed after I'd already cast. Drove my swim bait across it, and I'd seen him come and get it. It was probably my demise. There he is. No, that's the buck there. That ain't the one I'm looking for. That's a spotted bass even. Go on back down there, buddy. That's the way it's supposed to work right there. That's what you do. You have a fish come up, show itself, pick up something else, pitch back in there, catch it. But again, that was not the one I'm going after. There's a bigger fish in there. Gotta get out one more rod. I had an idea. That fish there made me think of something. Got it. There we go. The backside strikes again. Nice little fish right there. See you, buddy. That's kind of the second part of this whole deal. You get some fish to commit to the swim bait, you get them to eat it. Other fish you have to go back with a more finesse, a soft plastic presentation, something that's slow sinking. I've caught some on a shaky head today, but especially fish that are shallower, ones that are, you know, maybe where there's less wind, or if they're less than say 3 or 4 feet deep, a lot of times a weightless bait is actually the way to go over something like a Texas rig or a shaky head. This one here is the Berkeley Havoc backslide. It's a rear weighted bait. That back section actually is a little heavier salted where the front section is not, and it makes it back up. Like you pull it up, and it actually wants to back down in the water column. Whenever it does that, it goes right into a fish's face. They've got no choice but to eat it. Man, they just can't stand it. There we go. Yeah, I do a little jump. Man, that fish is mean. I guess I'd be mean too if somebody poked a hole in my lip. Right up here, buddy. There we go. Put you right back down in there and put you back on your bed. See ya. That fish there, he had bit my swim bait a minute ago. But one thing about it, whenever you're throwing that swim bait, and like here, I mean, there's a big brush pile, there's a lot going on in the water, there's a lot of places that fish could really be. And from sitting back at a distance, I threw my backslide in there, never did get bit, which kind of surprised me. So I eased up here and come to find out that fish was there, it's still on the bed. I just wasn't in the right spot. That's one thing you have to really pay a lot of attention to. That swim bait has a lot of drawing power. It'll pull a fish from 3 or 4, 5 feet away from its bed. But whenever you're throwing your finesse presentation back in there, you got to make sure that you've got it right in the right spot, because it doesn't have that kind of drawing power. It's not a big, aggressive type bait. So with this, you want to make sure that whenever you get a bite on a swim bait, you see where that fish goes back to. That's where you want to put your finesse presentation.
A lot of people ask me about a hydrowave. This is a unit that imitates the sounds of bait fish, different bait fish sounds, and bass attacking them. And there's a lot of different sound patterns. What I try to do is match a sound pattern for the conditions that I have that day. They're already built into the unit, and then you just control the volume either up or down. You control all the options right from the head unit right here, and then the speaker is mounted on the trolling motor down here. I've got it running right now, you can actually hear it. It'll get these fish fired up, it'll activate the bait, it triggers that competitive instinct in the fish when they hear that sound. Now that's what you were looking for right there. That's why you always throw that trailer hook. You know, I've always loved to throw a spinnerbait, so a trailer hook is absolutely critical. The most important thing with a trailer hook is when you put that on your spinnerbait, to put it on so it's free to swing. So put the hook on first, and then put your little keeper on, because no matter what the spinnerbait's doing then, that hook is going to be following, no matter if the bait's falling or you're pulling it up over a limb or anything, it's going to be right there where a bass is going to strike short. I catch at least 25% of all the bass I catch on a spinnerbait on that hook. So make sure you got one on there.
Brian Snowden has gained a ton of knowledge during his tenure on the Professional Bass Tour. Today he shows us how to catch ultra shallow smallmouth even in the summertime. Let's go to Bass School 101.
Dandy smallmouth. You know, one of the things that amazes me about northern smallmouth is even in the summertime, they're gonna stay ultra shallow. Some of the biggest fish you'll catch. That is the reason why you come up north. I wanna show you some of the lures and techniques I use to catch these ultra shallow smallmouth. When fishing up north for ultra shallow smallmouth, there's really three basic lures I like to use. The first one is the standard drop shot. I'm going to use something like a Z-drop worm. And I'm going to use this in areas that have a little more vegetation. I'm going to use it on an inside grass line in 3 to 4 feet of water. But I'm going to shorten up my leader a little bit and use it on a lighter weight, such as an 1/8 to a 3/16 ounce weight. The next thing I'm going to use is something that's a little more unique. And this I'm going to use in sparser open areas with rock and sand. And I'm going to use a small light lead head, maybe a 1/16 ounce, with a 3-inch sticko, which is really small, but it'll catch some really big smallmouth on those sunny, calm days when there's very little wind. The next technique is used a lot for smallmouth fishing. Still going to use it in that open area where there's sand, but it's usually used when there's a little more wind and clouds present and those fish are more aggressive. And that's just a regular standard tube in the 3.5 inch with a 3/16 ounce lead head. Try these techniques when you're fishing for those shallow smallmouth up in the northern part of the country.
Hello everyone. Today we're coming to you from the gigantic Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World Store in Springfield, Missouri. If you've never seen this place, you've got to get down here. It's awesome. We have a great show planned for you today. First, Edwin Evers breaks down super shallow boat docks. That's today's in-depth. You don't want to miss it. Then, Art Defoe shows us the importance of accurate casting. That's today's Bass School 101. But first, the master of all things ethereal, Rick Clunn, shows us that bass have senses that go far beyond just their eyesight. That's today's Fishing in 5.
We've got some really unique conditions that are going on this lake right now, and it happens pretty much every spring and early summer. The lakes will get an inordinate amount of rain, and what happens then, of course, is even a clear lake, often the major creeks will muddy up real bad. It kind of scares fishermen off. They think, oh, let's don't go, the fish aren't going to bite very well, you know, the water's muddy, it's high. Often, very often, in fact, you're missing a great opportunity, some of the best fishing you'll see. Because what happens is in that muddy water, now if this creek was clear, those fish could be at several different depths. You know, they could be 5 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot. But right now, when it gets muddy, they're in less than 5 foot. Okay, so that's helped you already. The second thing that off-color water and all this running water does, it creates current. The bait fish are being moved by that current. The predator's going to sit there and try to pick ambush points in eddies. So it really helps a bunch when you get off-color water. And what I'm looking for is what I call constriction, okay? What is constriction? It's where a big bay like this back in here, and this is a bay off from the lake, comes in and all of a sudden it turns into a narrow channel that goes out to the main channel. So where does all this water, flash flood water, come from that's coming in these creeks? It's got to go through the bay and then all of a sudden it's constricted right back down into this narrow channel going out to the main lake. The other thing is bridges. Usually they build bridges in the narrow area of the lake. That's a constricted area. It's going to create more current. A lot of fish use that themselves. They're just like me. They're going to gang up there because they know a lot of bait fish are going to be coming through there. Or even if it's not a narrow deal, bridges will have causeways and then a narrow bridge. Well, they've created a man-made constriction there. And so that's one of the main things I do like to look for when I'm fishing these kind of conditions where you have a lot of fresh water come in and a lot of water movement. One of the values of fishing these constriction areas is that there's more current there. What does the current do for you? It positions the fish. It's kind of positioning the fish for you. It's making it easier for you to figure out where they're at. That's been the size that you'll catch in this off-color water. This is normally clear. In a lot of these clear areas, it's hard to catch quality fish. And a lot of people don't believe they live in here, but you get the off-color water and they'll move up, and you'll be surprised how many really nice fish you'll find in these areas. Not only do you have, major flows coming in, but you have a lot of little bitty flows coming in. And those little bitty flows will actually create a small area of current, even when there is no current, that a lot of fish will often gang up around. What they're doing, they're just waiting for stuff to be pushed in. Bait fish are doing the same thing. It's just, again, it's one of those concentration areas. Another real key in this color of water is you don't want to get very far from the bank, especially if you got depth against it. The fish move on the bank in this color water, and that's what's helping you. You're moving real close to the bank, so you really want to stay as close to the bank as you possibly can. My favorite off-color water tools that I'm going to be using today are big square bills, big spinnerbaits, power rod and reel. I'm going to be using my big square bill. Why? Because it displaces a lot of water. This is the Lucky Strike Series 4 square bill. Got a wide wobble, big bait, moves a lot of water. Same with the big spinnerbait. It's a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait with a ringworm trailer on it. The Trickster long drop blade. That long drop blade displaces more water than any blade out there, and that's ultimately critical to attracting big fish, that's what we're after. Rod and reel, I'm using a heavy action 7-foot glass rod, 17-pound test, mono, and also using a Johnny Moore 6-to-1 gear ratio reel. Another thing you'll have in these real muddy water, if you'll look, this is willow weed. If you got willow weed, you'll look, you'll see it's clear right against that willow weed. That grass acts as a filter. And a lot of times you can pitch, that's another good bait, is to pitch a jig, flipping those willow weed, even throw a frog sometimes. I did catch some of my bigger ones right on the edge of the willow weed with spinnerbait. But that's another good thing in the muddy water, is that filtering system created by the grass. These fish are not deep. They're moving right on the bank. Okay, they're right on the bank, and so every cast should be to the bank. And if it's a deep bank, then I like to just move my boat right against that bank and go straight down it, so I'm keeping my lure in that zone the full length of the cast. The worst thing to do is keep your bait too far under the fish, because they don't want to really go down to it under these conditions. They want to come up to it.
You know, we all know that bass love to hang around the shadows around docks, but you just might be surprised at how shallow they'll actually get. Today, Edwin's going to show us how to catch them in really skinny water. It's today's In Depth.
I came to Lake Winnebago about a month and a half ago, and I had one of the best fishing days of my life, fishing offshore rock piles. So I thought, since I was up here for the Angler of the Year Championship, I'd stop off here and have a great television show fishing rock piles. There's one. Crankbait. That's what I like to see. And it would be a walleye. Well, let me tell you, it didn't work that way. I got out there this morning and fished quite a few of them. Trying to catch smallmouth, and I'm catching a walleye. Nothing like what I expected from a month and a half ago when I caught so many. Well, we have determined that this rock pile is a walleye rock pile. No bass here. So I didn't catch them out there. The water's a lot colder. We've kind of transitioned into fall. The leaves are starting to change, so I started moving a lot shallower. This lake is over 130,000 acres, a monster lake. But you would think it'd be deep. It's not. The deepest point in the lake's, in the upper 20s. It averages, I'm gonna guess, 10 to 15 foot. It's just a big, shallow bowl. You can be miles offshore and still just be 4 or 5 foot. Nice little smallmouth. Man, I hopped that thing off that rock. I was kind of snagged up and he ate it. I caught a few fish in the grass beds, like 2 to 3 foot. Still didn't find what I was looking for. Then I went to the bank and I went to those docks. There's one. Man, that fish was shallow. These points just create little pinch points, and there's a lot of current that goes through this lake. And every spot that there's a point, it just makes it that much more current that has to go around it. And then a dock, obviously is just an added bonus. A little bit of grass up there. First cast up there, I'm gonna drop the power poles and just make 4 or 5 more casts right here and see what else there is. There's another one. Not very big. Just a matter of hitting enough of these probably to find a point that's got big ones on it. There's another one. Right there, that's 3 fish, then a 5-foot circle off the tip of that point.
And they're eating that spinnerbait now. Both the trailer hook and the big hook in him. Skinny one. There he is. Oh, that's a good one. That's a nice one. Oh yeah. They're getting bigger. We got them little ones out of the way and we're starting to get some bigger ones. Oh, get in here, buddy. Look at that one. That's a nice one. Fall fishing, they get shallow and they eat. You know, that's 5 fish basically in 7 or 8 casts, you know, right off this point. You know, we really hadn't fished any points today. I just pulled up here and, you know, just kind of figuring this lake out a little bit, but I've noticed the grass is all laying this direction. There's not a lot of wind, but there obviously must be a lot of natural current in this lake, and it's just a natural pinch point where those fish can really ambush their prey. They've got a dock there for cover. Just a bunch of them sitting right there. I just want to keep casting in there, just see how many we can catch. It's kind of fun making the same cast over and over. That's a nice one. It was really shocking to me to find those fish actually as shallow as they were. You know, they had so much shallow water, shallow cover out off the bank, yet they wanted to be right on the bank, sometimes as shallow as 6-8 inches. And it is that deep right there. That's really, really shallow, guys. So don't ever think you've got to have a lot of depth up shallow. And it's not like there's a drop off right there. I mean, it's, you know, that deep, just out a little bit. So those fish just feel very protected up there because obviously we have dark water here, but yet that's going to be the most amount of current coming around that point. So that's where they're going to be able to ambush their prey, make it easiest for them to get an easy meal. You know, we just caught all those fish right there on that point there, and I'm going to fish a few more as we hopscotch down through here, but looking down this bank, to me, the next best one is that furthest one up there because it sticks out further than any of these others between here and there. You know, that point I just caught all those fish on, it's the furthest point in this vicinity. So that's what I'm looking for, is the ones that stick the absolute farthest out in the lake. You know, it's so important, guys, when you're out there and you're trying to figure something out. I just came out here fishing today, I hadn't been here, but to pay attention to all your surroundings and to everything going on. And what I mean by that is birds, and in this instance, it was current. You know, I saw that that grass was laid over. I saw what direction that current was going, and literally here in 2 points, I think we caught 10 or 12 fish. That one happens to be a sand bass, and man, he's a big one. But just paying attention to what's going on. You know, here at current was the whole key to these little spots.
I've always loved to fish around boat docks. You know, but usually you think that most of the bass are going to be on the outside, closest to the deepest water. One thing I've learned is that you can't get too shallow. Sometimes they're so shallow, you wonder how their backs are even going to be covered. I like to look for that shallow jet ski lift or that pontoon boat that's providing shade way up close to the shore. Don't think that you're fishing too shallow because the bass are probably going to be up there.
You know, when I got here, I really expected to start catching these fish out on the grass lines, you know, out a little bit deeper. You know, but then I just happened to notice that grass really laying over. And that's when I got up shallow. You know, I just kept working up shallow through that grass, and then I got up on the bank, started fishing these points, and it was just almost immediate, you know, that we started getting some bites. Huh, just gotten into sand bass now. Well, we're gonna head to the next one. This is the one that I pointed to from a distance. It does stick really far out there. Looking at my map, there is one little bit of a difference. You know, these points that I caught those fish off of, the contour lines came in really close, meaning I had deeper water closer. This point here, it's more of a big flat out in front of it. I don't know that it's gonna be the same. Looking at it from a distance, it looks great, but when I look at it on the map, it doesn't look as good. Got him. I got just another point right here that's facing into that current. Pinch point in the lake. And another bass. There is a bunch of them up there and they are eating, and there's all sizes. You got little ones to good ones, and just a matter of covering enough water to find some big ones, but it is spot on. I think I've hit 5 points and 4 of them have had fish, so it's definitely the pattern on this lake right now. Okay, now we fished 3 or 4 of these points so far, and I've determined a couple things. The ones that stick out the furthest are better, but you've got to have deep water access. Those first couple, the contour lines came in really close on my map, so I had deeper water close. This point here, I didn't have any bites on, or very few compared to those first few. It's not deep. It's shallow for a long way, so you've got to find the ones that's got deep water close by. You know, it was multiple casts. You know, you can make the same exact cast, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 times and still get bit on that same cast. It's just really important. When you find that cast on that dock that triggers those fish, make that cast again and again and again. You can see how this dock is leaning. Oh, golly, I had a bite right there. And that's all from ice. When that ice breaks up, you know, this dock obviously is a stationary dock. They don't take it out, and that's what the ice does to it. There's a nice one. Oh, yeah. That's what docks have for you right there. Come here, fish. First cast up there. A nice fish. Yeah, buddy. Get in the boat. That's a good one. Man, I've had 4 or 5 bites like this today. It's the first one I got in the boat. That's a good one. Oh. 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 One thing, guys, that I've learned in my years of bass fishing, that's 3 casts in the same spot, but you'll notice I caught the biggest one first. And the majority of the time, those big ones will always bite on your very first cast. They don't get big by sitting back and letting all the other bass eat first. So just remember that when you make that first cast, expect to catch the biggest one first. That's usually how it happens. Oh, get in here, buddy. I caught a lot of fish, you know. When I got up there in those docks and around those docks, you know, I'd reel my spinnerbait in and I start seeing little shad and little clues to tell me the bass are here.
Hey, here's a fast fact for you. This is a big safety tip that a lot of people may not realize is available in a bass boat. Let me take you underneath my console to show you what I mean. This here is a foot throttle, and it actually is the same application that you'll find in the gas pedal of a vehicle. Now what this does, when I'm engaged in gear, I'm not having to adjust my speed back and forth. I can control that with my foot throttle, allowing me to keep both hands on the steering wheel at all times. Now another important feature is having these trim tabs right here at the steering wheel. Again, I don't have to reach over here and adjust my trim on the throttle. I've got it right here to adjust. A big time safety tip, and that's a fact.
If you've ever wondered how the pros consistently catch so many bass, it may very well come down to what they do when they make their cast. Today, Ott's gonna break it down in Bass School 101.
One very basic thing that a lot of people undervalue is casting accuracy. Being able to make a very precise cast, especially in shallow water, will help you catch a lot more bass. You want to visualize how that fish is going to be sitting. You know, sometimes if the water's clear enough, you're fortunate because you can actually see just how those fish are positioned. But if it's not quite that clear, you have to just visualize and imagine how those fish are going to be set up. Most of the time, whatever the piece of cover is, if that bass is in an active feeding type position, they're going to be facing that cover, shoreline, brush pile, whatever it is. Those fish are going to be facing it. So making a cast where your bait lands between the cover and the fish, that's where the strike zone is going to be. Those fish know that if it gets between them and whatever the cover is, their chance of running it down, catching it, and eating it goes way, way up. And that's why those fish will bite. They're an opportunistic feeder. So if the opportunity arises for a very easy meal, that's when they're going to strike, and that's where you want to put your bait, right in that strike zone where that fish can pin it down. The actual cast itself is actually a very big part of this deal. Whenever you go to make a cast, skipping that bait in and that bait skipping across the surface of the water, that gets that bass's attention. He hears something and it sounds just like a bait fish fleeing, jumping across the surface. And that gets a bass excited. Anytime they hear something like that, they're going to be checking it out and seeing what's going on. Whenever you are skipping, one thing to keep in mind is that as soon as that bait goes below the surface of the water, that's when a lot of your bites are going to come, because you've got that fish interested in the bait before he ever even knows what it is. So whether it's say a jig, a swim bait, a topwater bait, whatever it may be that you're skipping in there, that fish really doesn't even know what it is till it breaks the surface, but he's going to bite it before he ever even gets a good look at it. So making that cast, making that bait skip across the surface, at a lot of times is more important than what you've got tied on the end of the line. Be it a jig, a swim bait, a topwater bait, making that presentation where that bait skips across the surface and gets the fish's attention, that's what it's all about.
Welcome to the Bass Pros. I'm standing inside the beautiful new Bass Pro Shops here in Tacoma, Washington, and this place is incredible. You gotta come see it. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Edwin Evers is going to show us how to be successful with not just one fluke, but two. He's prepared to break it down as we go in depth. Then, one of the most important tools in your box is right under your feet. It's your boat. I'm going to show you how to tweak some of the built-in features to make for a more successful day out on the water in Bass School 101. But first, have you ever wondered where to locate fish between the winter time and the early spring spawn? Today, Rick Clun shows us how to do just that in Fishing in 5.
You know, unlike most other sports where the playing field is AstroTurf or the greens of a golf course, NASCAR or track, our playing field is water. And that's going to really play an important role in understanding what we're going to do today, and it's more so in the way water has formed our playing field. Water originally formed this whole basin here, and that's really key to understand today, because what we're looking for are these sheer bluffs where the fish have been in cold winters, and that's what normally coming out of a winter, or even especially cold winter like we've had this year, these fish stay on those vertical banks created by these old rivers and creeks when they cut these bluff banks. That's where the fish have been, but now they're moving to the ends of these bluffs, and then they're going to move into the nearest spawning areas they can here in another couple of weeks or so. So that's really what I'm going to be going into, how to transition these fish from where they've been in the winter to where they're eventually going to spawn here in a few weeks. If you got a good depth finder, you see all these little contour lines. See, these contour lines on this side are all far apart. That means it's a sloping surface. Now these fish are stayed here in the winter. Now they're going to try to move around these points up in here to where they'll eventually be spawning somewhere back in here. That's where these lines get real close together in these little side pockets, because that's where they're going to move in and stage. They're not yet ready to spawn, but they want to move close to there. They'll move on those little deeper channel swings in these side creeks, and then when it warms up, then they're going to spread out in there and spawn on the shallower areas. So that's kind of what we're looking for right there if you're looking at a contour map or if you're looking on your depth finder. Right here you got a little bit, see how this bank looks like it's about a 45, and then you see have some of this shelf rock right here on this bank. That you can see it's kind of a little ledge, it's ledge rock. That shelf rock indicates it's going to drop quicker. That creates more of a vertical bank, the same thing that they have been on all winter out on the bigger bluffs. Basically, they're controlled by the sun. Imagine if they were a turtle. On the warm days, they like to go up toward the sun. On the cold days, they go back down. And unlike a turtle that has to come up occasionally more often, they don't. So on the real cold days, they're going to go deeper and deeper to get away from that cold air. Kind of just conservation of energy. The sun is really controlling the fish. He's a cold-blooded creature. And he is basically he doesn't want to be way up in this flat, and then it gets cold and he's got to move 200 yards to find where he can actually get depth to get away from it. So they stay on the vertical stuff. So they just move up and down it. They don't want to do a whole lot of horizontal movement until the weather stabilizes and gets a lot warmer and stays warm. The bait selection this time of year can be varied, but really, if you want to keep it simple, what I'm going to refer to as the pre-spawn time. They've just now come out of that hard winter. They're wanting to move toward where they're going to spawn, and it's either going to be a jerkbait or a crawfish type crankbait. But that's really the two key baits this time of year. Sometimes if it's not a deeper lake, you'll throw a square bill in there in a shad or a red color. What's going on in a lot of these lakes in this, coming out of this hard winter is you have a lot of shad that have either died or been stunned, and that's where the jerkbait works well. It kind of imitates those. But also what you have is fish really feed on crawfish a lot right before they spawn. And so you'll see I'm going to go to a crawfish pattern bait here. This one here is what I call a middle freak. What I like about it is two things. It gets deep quick. Its angle of descent is very fast, and then that means it's going to stay deep longer too. And these banks are usually we're fishing fairly near that deepest part of the bank, so you want the bait to get a little bit of depth. Again, that's where they should be staging. Again, they're going to eventually move up into shallower areas to spawn, but they're not doing that yet. The stick bait is probably top bait this time of year. The jerk bait here is what we call an RC Sticks by Lucky Strike. It's basically a khaki green back with a transparent shad colored on the side. So I'm simulating a shad with this bait. The other bait we'll be fishing and is very popular is a crawfish type bait. And these come in all different types of crawfish patterns. I like this deep diving middle freak. It's got a square bill, much like a shallow runner, but except it goes deep and it deflects off the bottom and walks through the rocks, very similar to what a crawfish would be doing. We've had a very hard winter, and these fish are holding out there still closer to their winter areas than they normally would be. If we'd had a normal winter, they'd probably have been progressed further back. But now we've already caught 3 keepers on this stretch. So that's telling me these fish that have been wanting to move up are now really starting to move. And now, since they have been held back by the cold water and cold weather, that transition is going to be probably 2 to 3 times faster than it would be in a normal winter.
I was fishing a tournament in northern Michigan several years ago, and in that event I was fishing a double fluke rig. One of the cool things I noticed is that you can mix up the colors and see what color the bass are really wanting. In that event I was fishing for smallmouth, and they were really preferring the bright bubblegum color over the natural pearl shad color. So remember, if you're trying to figure out which color works the best, put on a double fluke rig and you're soon to find out.
One of the greatest things about a fluke is how weedless it is. It's a bait that I can throw in areas of grass and trees and really heavy cover that no other bait will come through. You know, I can't tell you how many times, you know, I've wanted to maybe throw a spinnerbait or swim a jig or some of those things, and it just will not come through that really snotty moss and slime. Man, a fluke is a bait that really shines in those instances. Oh, there's a big one. Ooh, I got 2. Oh, I do, I got 2! That's what the double fluke rig will do for you right there. Oh, looky there. Oh man, that back one is a big one too. Oh, you always grab the big one first. And then you just pull them in the boat like that. And that's why you fish a double fluke rig. Smallmouth, largemouth, all predatory fish a lot of times will travel in groups. So when you have, you know, catch one, I can't tell you how many times I've always see other fish following it, and you get to catch 2 at a time. Oh, that's great. The single fluke or the double fluke is a bait I'm gonna be able to have tight on anytime that water's, you know, in the mid 50s or higher. It's one I'm gonna have tight on all summer, you know, all fall and the spring. Schooling fish. It's just a bait that's very, very good for me when those bass are feeding on shad. I love catching them burning a spinnerbait, but sometimes that bait's just a little too big, too bulky. A really good finesse way to change your spinnerbait is to add a swimming fluke, and man, it's just a very, very subtle presentation. Oh, man! Oh! One thing about those smallmouth, man, they will jump. Look how he ate that thing. He had that thing all the way down in his mouth when I first pulled him up, but They will flat eat that. When you take that skirt off that thing and you put that swimming fluke or regular fluke on there, they will eat it. I'll go ahead and I'll take that skirt off the spinnerbait and I'll run this swimming fluke right up on the bait, push it up there on there. It'll go right over that big added weight. And you talk about something that's really subtle, yet something I can cover a lot of water in a hurry. They will flat eat that. Oh gosh, what do I got? Oh, I can't catch up to him now. Here he's gonna jump. Big largemouth. Looky there. Back-to-back cast, we catch a smallmouth and then one of those right there. Woo, buddy. Beautiful fish. It's just that time of year, you know, we're at the end of summer. Every fish we've caught is just really long, skinny. They're up there feeding hard. That was fun. Man, he was pulling hard. One of my favorite drop shot baits is actually to use the tiny fluke. You know, this one right here is a green pumpkin. It's just a great shad-shaped bait. You know, when I feel like I'm fishing for fish deep and I need to have something that's a shad shape, that tiny fluke represents those shad minnows that fish feed on so well. Now, if they're feeding on a bigger minnow, I'll go to the bigger size. It's just called a fluke right here. Same thing, I'll nose hook it, works really well, but you know, just on a drop shot with a nose hook, it's just one other way that I can catch fish on the fluke, and it really shines when they're feeding on those shad. Big one. Oh yeah. Nice one, look at this one. Golly, stay on there, babe. One thing about a fluke, it's just very, very versatile. We've caught them literally in water 6 inches deep and now out really, really deep. We've caught fish, you know, spotted bass, largemouth, smallmouth. I mean, it's just one of those baits that you can catch anything on. It's just a very, very versatile bait that, you know, it's just not a one-dimensional thing. It's a great profile, and it's just a bait I really like throwing. Gotcha. Threw my fluke off. We got her. It's a nice one. Man, those brown fish are fun to catch. Look at that fish, would you? It's a good one. Thank you, thank you. That is just prime example of how versatile that fluke is. You know, we've caught fish today in 6, 8 inches, a foot of water, now all the way out here in 25 foot of water, all on the same style bait. You know, granted, I've changed up the size, the color a little bit, but those are the things that you have to do with a fluke. You know, it's just a very, very versatile bait. It's not one-dimensional. It's just that profile that fish like. And not only, you know, fish, but I'm talking about smallmouth, spotted bass, and largemouth. Caught them all today.
You know, if you get your bait hung like that, the main thing is don't set the hook and drive it in there. I'll try to shake it free. And if I can, I'm gonna drop the rod tip and I'm gonna grab it till it's tight, pull it pretty tight, and then just pop it. A lot of times 3 or 4 times like that. And there we go. Comes right to the top, and just floats back out. It'll come, you know, it works not every time, but most of the time.
So you have a boat and you can get to the fish. But are you properly using all of the tools to be more productive and efficient? Let me show you what I mean in Bass School 101. There's always certain trends that are happening in the sport of bass fishing. Let's face it, with certain tackle and lures, whether it's a new color or a new lure, we've got to have them in our tackle box. But did you know there's certain add-ons to your boat that can make you a much better angler and be a lot more efficient out on the water? Starting in the engine transom area at the back of the boat, One of the things I really like are the power poles. They're great for shallow water, allowing you to let yourself down, even if you're going down the bank and you need a cola fish or you're setting up on a visual fish that you can see. I really like a hydraulic jack plate. What that's going to do is going to allow you to get up on plane in those shallow water areas, but more importantly, find the exact adjustment to allow your bass boat to perform the best. A very convenient transom saver, the motor made, it stores easily, easy to put on and off. Now, two other products that I like to have in my boat at all times. Number one, keeping all of my gear and equipment protected, the KVD two-way boat alarm. Guys, this is a product that activates when it senses motion in and around the boat. A great product, it's easy to install, you can do it by yourself. Now the other one, I'm launching by myself a lot, as we all do, the Z-Launch boat strap. This is a bungee strap that when you launch your boat, it's gonna bring it back to you. And guys, if you're fishing out of a pontoon boat, this product is phenomenal. Now, taking a look inside the boat, you don't open a lid normally and see the top of a cooler. This is actually insulation. Now, this also doubles as storage if you just want to use it as storage, but to me, this is a lifesaver in fishing tournaments. Nitro has this as an option that you can actually take 3 or 4 bags of ice, dump it in here, and the water runs through these coils. So in other words, you don't have the chlorine that's in the ice water, as some people do when they dump it in here, that can be harmful to the fish. Now, the last thing I want to show you is this HydroWave. This is actually sound technology. Now, this does 2 things for me. Number one, it's going to hide the on and off of my trolling motor. It's going to really hide that noise, but it's also, more importantly, going to stir up the bait fish and make those bass get active. Hey, just adding a few things to your boat is going to make for a more successful any-fish-it day out on the water.
Welcome everyone. We're in the beautiful Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World in Oklahoma City. We've got a show that is packed with all kinds of bass fishing information. Let's get right to it. Today, Kevin Van Dam's going to show us how he follows those schools of shad when they move really shallow. It's all about the topwater on today's In Depth. Then, I'm going to break down the mechanics of walking the dog. This is a must-have skill if you want to take your fishing to the next level. Don't miss Bass School 101. But first, Timmy Horton's going to take us all the way to New York, where he's dropping heavy creature baits, pitching the grass. Here comes Fishing in 5.
You know, a lot of people will use this 1.5 ounce setup in Florida, but in New York, pitching heavy tackle to heavy cover can work all over the country, and I'm about to show you why.
You can see up ahead of us there's a lot of these mats. You can tell what we're looking for. You know, kind of looking at the big picture up here. You got this really big mat. It's a little bit further out and some scattered ones along it. And, you know, we do this technique in Florida. We do it in Texas. And here we are in upstate New York doing the same thing, so it's pretty cool. That tells you a largemouth, it has the same tendencies. You know, you can really pattern them and what they like to do. There we go. And get heavy tackle. You know, this right here is a 1 ounce Bass Pro Shops tungsten weight. This is a big lure. And a largemouth, no matter where he lives, wants to eat something really big. But it takes that big weight to be able to penetrate through those mats. You know, a lot of people will come out and they'll be afraid to get right in the middle of this stuff. They'll play around in the outside of these weeds, and you can catch some. You know, there's gonna be some bass staging up out here, but those really big fish are gonna be right in the heart of that thick cover. A lot of bait fish moving around in this grass right on the surface. That tells you there's a lot of things happening in this that's right. You know, the ecosystem is alive from the little bitty bait fish on top. The bluegill are gonna be in this grass eating them. The bass are gonna be in there eating the bluegill and the crayfish. So oh, let's get right back in there. Boy, that one pulled me down. A lot of times you can get right back in there and catch them. What I like to do is just pitch it in there, let it fall all the way to the bottom, and give 2 or 3 pull-ups. And one thing you got to pay attention to, are you getting a bit high up and under the canopy, or are they on the bottom? We've got 3 or 4 foot from the canopy to the bottom. And those bass will be in 1 or 2 places. I've seen when the water is cold, like early in the wintertime in Florida and places, the sun will actually radiate that canopy and they'll get their back right up against it for warmth. So when that's happening, you want to pull it up and just kind of let it fall only a couple of inches, keeping it close to the top. But these bass here are along the bottom, so I really want to let it go all the way down, pull it up 2 or 3 times, and let it get back down to the bottom. Obviously underneath you're going to have about a 6-inch solid canopy. And what happens is this grass grows up, and you can see underneath right here what it does. But it grows up, and the blades of grass is usually about 6 inches wide. And then when it hits the surface, it just canopies along the surface. But you've got windows all separated in between that. So it really is just an awesome setup for the bass to live and eat, shade, cover. The vegetation is going to put off oxygen. The oxygen content is going to be really high. That's why when you got vegetation, and we go to a lot of tournaments on the tournament trails, if there's vegetation there, that's usually where it's going to be won, is in the vegetation. There's a bite. There we go. Oh, that's a better one there. I don't know if he's still on there or not. Oh yeah, he's on there. That's crazy. Oh, he's not as big as I thought. He's not big at all. Yeah, that just goes to show you, it fools you, and that's why you need that heavy line. You know, when you get bit like that, pull up there and place a waypoint right on it. You know, if you fish around the lake and you're not getting bit, a lot of times you can come right back. You know, even though we caught a few and it kind of stirred up the moment there a little bit, but 2 bites like that really quick tells you there's a school of them right here. So what I'll do, I'll leave and fish some more stuff and come back to this area and hit it again, and it'll usually be good for a few more fish. Pitching this heavy cover, you've got to have the right setup. You know, when you're using this 1.5 ounce weight, we actually went up to this today in that size to get through the heavy cover. I like the sinker stop. And what I like to do is just simply thread this thing on here. It's very easy to rig. All right, next we're going to go to our tungsten weight. This is just a Bass Pro Shops 1.5 ounce tungsten. You've really got to have something heavy to get through all of that cover. I like the green pumpkin. It just matches the color of the lure we're using. Kind of makes it all look like one setup. Now we're going to take a 4/0 Magna Superlock XPS hook. You got to have a big bite hook when using this big plastic. And then it's just simply a Texas rig. And this color is called Summer Crawl. It's one of my favorite colors. Anytime I'm around clear water, I like green pumpkin with something just a little bit different. And that chartreuse on the other side works really well. Just bring it up, Texas rig it. Now what we've got here is a very compact lure. It's big and bulky. It's going to get you those bigger fish, but it's also compact and it goes through really well. I like these ridges. Those fish can feel it when it's moving around in that grass, and they can find it and really attack it. So no matter if you're in the southeast, the west coast, the Midwest, or here in the northeast, you find grass, you can catch them with this technique.
Just fishing a topwater in shallow water may be enough to catch a few fish, but if you really want to catch sheer numbers of fish, you've got to find the bait fish the bass are feeding on. Kevin Van Dam's going to break it all down for us today in depth.
Got him. Golly. Kentucky Lake is, part of the Tennessee River, and in the fall of the year they draw the lake down about 5 feet. So it really exposes a lot of the grass, a lot of the shallow bars and things like that, and it is filled with shad. So it's a really good time of the year when a lot of action goes on. You'll see a lot of schooling, a lot of fish busting shad, so I mean it's perfect for topwater.
He's just right off the edge of that grass. Look at that fish right there. Healthy. This time of the year, the fish are really focused on shad, so topwater is a great choice just for the fact that the water's kind of clear and you can help break up the outline of that bait by just keeping it up on top. I mean, other than that, you'd have to fish something really, really slow right now to catch them. So having this stick bait where you move it fairly quick, doesn't have a lot of profile, they're looking up at it like this. Topwater is really an overlooked tool in a lot of situations. People think cloudy, winds, stuff like that first thing in the morning, late in the evening. Here we are in the middle of the day, high bright skies, slick water, and they're biting it. One of the things that I really look for, like this, is an area that has a lot of flat water. I mean, the bass love to be able to push those shad up to an edge, and a couple of things that they can do to get them up there where they can get them is either they got to push them up there so shallow towards the bank where they can't go any farther, or right here, there's a grass line that they can push them against that edge, so they can sit there and wait for the pods of shad to drift down through here and then just ambush them and then run them into the edge of that grass and blast them. So I'm looking for the shad and I'm looking for potential bass blowing up. With this bait I can cast it a long ways if I see one blow up, I want to be ready to fire it in there. You know, we started out in the afternoon, the first day, kind of late in the day, and it was post-frontal. I mean, it was slick, calm, bright sun. But on Kentucky Lake, I mean, those bass are still going to be up there shallow. So, but it was tough. You know, it was only had a few bites. You know, caught a couple of fish. Finally, you got it good. But, anyways, you know, just a nice little fish right there. But we're going to keep at it. It's getting that prime time of day. Tomorrow we're supposed to have a little weather change, and I think the bite will be a lot better. Totally new, different day. Now this is more like it right here. You know, for topwater fishing, this is the perfect conditions. You know, we got a light breeze, we got a lot of clouds, had a big front come through, a bunch of rain this morning, and these are the conditions where it's a lot easier to fool them. You can fish faster, and again, I can really work this bait and cover a lot of water. With the water clarity that we have on Kentucky Lake, without a doubt, my #1 bait is a Strike King Sexy Dog. I mean, that walking stick bait is something that you can move fast so they don't get too good a look at it. It's got a big profile like a gizzard shad, and you know, it's just the perfect medicine for them, because you can throw it out there in a foot of water and it stays on top where it's not going to get caught in the grass. It's one of the few lures that you can fish everywhere there. And another real bonus is that you can cast it a mile. Well, we're kind of in a back channel off the river, and it's, you know, 5 foot where I'm sitting, but I'm throwing up there and really in about a foot or 18 inches of water. It's just a shallow little flat bar, and it has grass on top of it. Just kind of, they call it spiny naiad, and it's just kind of like a carpet. And they'll just get up on top of this little bar, and the current's sweeping down through here, the wind's pushing on it, and they're just sitting there waiting for pods of shad to come drifting down through here. Gosh. Oh gosh, that was a good one. You know, I've had 7 or 8 bites on the topwater up there, and you know, you always have to have a follow-up bait, but you know, there's a whole school there, so I'm gonna show them something different. That's the key, is just keep showing them different things if you can. You know, if it's deeper, you might show a crankbait, a Swimbait, different things like that. But here, this caffeine shad is one of my favorite baits. You know, it's something I can fish fast, it's weedless, and I can keep it right on the top. This caffeine shad, to me, is hard to beat. Looks like a shad that's fluttering down and dying. You know, when these fish are busting, and it's always great, you know, when you're throwing topwater, you gotta have a follow-up bait. And mine is a caffeine shad, is my favorite. And I thought for sure it was a carp or something like that. I mean, it exploded on it.
We all know how great topwater fishing is, but it's such a risk-reward technique. You know, there's days that they'll eat the topwater bait, then there's days they won't fully commit all the way to the surface. One thing I really like to do, the adjustment I like to make when that's happening, is to throw a small subsurface crankbait like this Megabass Knuckle Jr. This bait here has a 0 to 1 foot diving mode that keeps it up near the surface, and those fish will fully commit to it.
So this is the kind of area that I'm looking for, and I mean, there's a real shallow ridge right here. If I zoom out, you can see there's a big shoal out here outside of us, and then there's several of these little shallow humps right here, spotty humps, and there's a bigger one here. There's a lot of stuff around here, and again, the current's coming down through this way, so it's going to be feeding this whole area, feeding this whole flat. So this is a good area that's got a lot of potential. But I mean, even you can look around behind me, and as we're fishing, you can see these big, shallow grass flats. And then out in the middle, out here where I'm at, I mean, I'm this far off the bank and it's only 5 foot deep. You cannot fish too shallow this time of the year in a lot of cases. I mean, they're gonna push those shad as high up onto that point or high up onto that bar as they can. So don't think you're casting too shallow. The biggest mistake a lot of people make in fishing this, you know, the fall pattern like this on these lowland reservoirs is not fishing shallow enough. Got it. As soon as it hit the water. God, it's so, I mean, it's hitting the bottom, it's so shallow. Almost every place on the bottom of this lake is hard bottom. As long as it's got some current flowing over it, if it's close to the main lake, it's gonna have hard bottom. If you mix that with a little bit of grass, you got a heck of a good area. That's all that is you can see there's a little bit of it there. We'll show some more here in a minute, but it's that spiny, they call it spiny naiad. And you know, topwater is one of your, you know, not only is it the best choice, it's almost the only choice. These fish will push so far out on some of these places that you just can't really throw anything else. You know, if you, even a super shallow crankbait, you're caught. You just can't do much else out there. And you know, the only other choice I really have is a buzz bait, you know, but with a single hook, you just miss so many of them. With this, with 3, I'm having a hard enough time. You know, this pattern, you're gonna catch a lot of fish like this. You're gonna catch a lot of these fish that are just, you know, 1 pound to 2 pounds, but man, it's a ton of fun. Let me show you what I've been throwing real quick here. And you know, there's a lot of different topwater baits. But for this time of the year, when the fish are focused on shad, there's no doubt that a topwater stick bait like the Sexy Dog, or you know, a popper like the KVD Splash, you know, those are my 2 favorites. And my follow-up bait is definitely a caffeine shad. You know, today I was using this blue gizzard shad, and the main reason is because it's real clear. You know, something like that, or this clear sexy shad, it allows some light to go through it, so it looks more natural. You know, on these type of conditions with this clear water. You know, the popper is a totally different sound and look. You know, it has that feather tail, so it has a lot of action in the water, and it really makes a good chugging and splashing noise. So it spits, chugs, walks, and it's very erratic. And it's a little smaller profile, so it's more of a finesse type thing. You know, when you get, you know, a light ripple, this is hard to beat, you know, right here. So my follow-up bait is the caffeine shad. And you know, this is kind of my 1-2 punch. You know, I'm gonna throw a topwater first. I can fish that faster and cover a lot of water. Once I, you know, get a spot where I've caught a couple fish, or I get a couple bites, I'm never gonna leave without throwing that in there. Or if one blows up on the topwater and doesn't get it, cast this in there immediately. It's just a great follow-up bait. There's a good one, big one. That's a good one. I mean, he absolutely just piled around it. Now that's what you're looking for right there. These fish, they want to be up there because the bait's up there. Cover a ton of water, fish fast. The fish are going to let you know if they're there. That's a good one right there. You can see, I mean, he just absolutely choked it too. You know, he got all of it. I like this, the full size, the big Sexy Dog this time of the year, because you know, these fish are really concentrating a lot on gizzard shad, and they're big in profile, and this has got 3 treble hooks. As many as I've missed already, you want 3 hooks. Anywhere in the fall, you know, shad are gonna be the key, and I look for flat points. I look for flat points in the backs of creeks and things, you know, wherever the shad are gonna be moving to. Here on Kentucky Lake, a lot of the fish stay on these flats just off of the river because there's current going through them all the time. You know, on lakes that don't have river current or power generation, they're gonna move back into those creeks. It's all about the shad this time of year. Got him. That's a better one.
You know, we often talk about the proper hooks on crankbaits, and of course the style, the sharpness of them, but the one thing we do not talk about is the distance between that point and the body of the bait. And that's really critical, especially on these big bodied square bills and your big bodied deep diving baits. I like to use long shank hooks, and also sometimes to even increase that distance, instead of using the round split ring, I'll use the oval split ring. You're gonna put a whole lot more fish in the boat and lose a lot less with this style.
Topwater fishing is one of my all-time most favorite techniques, but your ability to walk the dog when topwater fishing can really help you catch some of those bigger fish. I'm going to try to teach you how in today's Bass School 101. One of my most favorite baits to throw is a topwater, and in particular, a walking style bait, a cigar style bait like this Megabass X-Pod. But one of the key components to getting that bait to walk side to side is that knot, and in particular, a loop knot. That opens the nose of that bait up. Let me show you how to tie it. So to start off, to tie this loop knot, I just run my line through there, and I get plenty to work with. You know, it makes it a lot easier if you get plenty to work with. I've got my bait, each end right here. I'm just gonna take that bait, twist it around 3 times. I still got this hole. I hold both ends right here. I take the bait, I put it through that hole, just like that right there. And then with that loop, I'm gonna attach it to the back side of the eye of the bait. I get both those loops right there behind that eye, and then I start pulling it down. Again, holding those loops behind the eye, that's the key. Pull it down and almost get it tight. Then I let those loops off the back side, pull it tight, and voila, I have that loop knot. Thus, it's free to move any direction, no restriction on that bait at all. And you know, some people might wonder, well, how do I get that thing to do that side-to-side action? And it's all in the rod. You move the bait with your rod, reel the slack with your reel. Keep that in mind and think about that. I'm moving the bait side to side, and after I move the bait, I reel the slack. Move the bait, reel the slack. Move the bait, reel the slack. And that's how you get that bait to go side to side. So you jerk, reel, jerk, reel, jerk, reel, and that gets that bait to going side to side. So you always move the bait with the rod, reel the slack up with the reel. The other key component is the braid. The braid makes it a lot easier. You can do it with monofilament, but it has a lot of stretch, and it makes it a little harder. Also, I get a lot better hook sets with this braid when I make those super long casts. Medium action rod, something's got a lot of tip, really help you get that bait walking back and forth, and a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel. I can take that slack up in a hurry when I'm really walking that bait fast.
Wow, what a store. We're coming to you from inside the beautiful Bass Pro Shops outdoor world in Bristol, Tennessee. We've got a great lineup for you today, so let's get it started. Today, Tim Horton takes us step-by-step through a technique that he's used for the last 15 years to win tournaments. You can't miss today's in-depth. Then the man who's won Angler of the Year 7 times joins us. Kevin Van Dam shares the trailers you should use to enhance a vertical jig in Bass School 101. But first, it's an age-old question. What does it feel like when a fish bites a worm? Stacy King tells us today in Fishing in 5.
Do you know what a bite feels like on a plastic worm? Look at this. Oh my goodness. Are you sure? There's a little bite. Oh, missed him. Come on. Oh. How do you know it's not a rock? Oh, he's a little bitty tiny. How do you know it's a fish? There he is. Just what does a worm bite feel like? That's a big one. Look at the size of that toe. You know, I found out over the years that a lot of people I take fishing that have never had much experience fishing a plastic worm are intimidated by it because they don't really understand what the bite feels like. It's really imperative that you learn how to fish a plastic worm. Whether you fish it on a Texas rig or a jig head worm or whatever, it's one of the most important baits in bass fishing. Hello, bass. I dropped that thing down in there, and about the time it hit the bottom, I just saw my line jump like that. Boy, I just set the hook because I knew it was on. When I'm fishing a plastic worm, what I'll do is I'll cast it or pitch it out there, and I keep my rod high, and I always peel line off, letting it fall on slack. I don't care if it's 1 foot deep or 35 feet deep. I want that thing to fall on slack line straight to the bottom, because if you tighten up on it and point your rod at it, it pendulums back to you, and you don't want that to happen. Then you want to take up the slack and work it with your rod tip. Work it with your tip up high like this. Move it a few times and then tighten up and move it. Drop it down, get a little slack in it, and keep plenty of bow in that line out there. So when that fish bites it, he doesn't feel you. There's a little one. Well, one thing about those little ones, you know, you're always out here trying to catch a big one, but if you want to learn how to catch fish on a worm, it's great to get bites. So lots of little bites will teach you what that bite feels like. You always want to remember, you never want to move your bait with the reel. You always want to have slack line and move your worm with the tip of that rod. Move it 4, 5, 6 inches and just use the reel to take up the slack. Because if you're moving that bait with a reel and that bass runs up there and hits it, he's going to feel you. So you want to do it with your rod tip, because as soon as you feel something, then you can back off and give him slack, you know, and if it's not a fish, tighten up, feel it. If it is one, you'll feel him moving. You really want to be able to feel the stuff on the bottom, you know, like you want to feel the limbs and the rocks and the grass or vegetation, whatever kind of place you're fishing in. But you want to be able to discern the bite from the bottom. You want to be able to tell the difference. Well, what is the difference? Always remember that that fish, it's alive, it's going to move. And the other thing is, you know, when you're fishing with a plastic worm, it's a real soft texture. A lot of them have salt or scent in them. And 9 times out of 10, when a bass bites a worm like that, he's not going to drop it. He's going to hold on to it. So you don't really need to get in any hurry. Just get yourself in position and make a good hook set when you know you've got a bite. Really important to learn to detect the bite on a fall. When you first pitch or cast a plastic worm out there and you're letting it fall on that slack line, one of the most important things you can do is watch your line. And if it stops before it gets to the bottom, you know, if you're fishing in 10 foot of water and that worm stops after it goes down 3 or 4 feet, you know there's probably fish. So you ease up on it until you feel it and see if you can feel something moving. And the other thing is, if you see your line snap or jump, you know that a bass has inhaled that worm. So you watch for that. And then in the case when it just falls down to the bottom and you pick up on it and it's heavy, you're not sure if it's a rock or stump or whatever. So then is when you just hold it and wait. And you just keep easing up and put a little more pressure on it. If it's a fish, he's going to start moving. You're going to immediately feel some movement. He's alive. You're going to feel him. If it's a rock or stump, it's just going to be steady. So pop it on over there and start bringing it in again. There's something. That's a big one. Oh man. Oh man. She's got me down in that stuff. That feels like a good one. I mean, he has got me in that stuff. I don't know if I'll ever get him out of it or not. Boy, he's big. Here he comes up. Look at him. There, she's coming loose now. Oh, come on now, come on. Too deep for me to reach now. Oh, there he comes. That just goes to show you though, a plastic worm is a killer bait for big bass. Look at the size of that toe, along with the grass. He ate that worm and took me for a rodeo down in this stuff. That fish is perfect. She hadn't got a mark on her. She wanted a big meal. I'm gonna release her back. Release her right here in front of that camera so she doesn't get that grass on her. All right, grow up, girl. Get bigger for next time. And the moral of that story is when you feel a bass bite it, he's got it in his mouth, so set the hook.
Tim Horton loves getting kids hooked on fishing. It's no wonder he's a favorite out on the tournament trail. Here he is with today's In Depth.
One of my first experiences in fishing with artificial lures was a plastic grub. You know, a plastic grub is basically just a 3 to 4 inch body with a curl tail on the end, and that was just a presentation that was easy for me to learn how to fish, learn how to feel a strike, see what that feels like. Not only was it one of those techniques that's easy to do, easy for someone that's just beginning to start out fishing to be able to do, it's one of those techniques that you see on the tournament trail. Guys use it all the time in a lot of different applications, whether it's rigged on a single jig head or rigged with an Alabama rig. You know, it's just one of those techniques that has stood the test of time and will be here 25 years from now, still working. Here we go. Oh, that's a big one. Oh yeah, goes to show you right there, a grub can be many things. That is a giant largemouth. Man, this is a lure that has transcended time in a lot of ways. Bass Pro Shops grub. We ate about 3 of them too. What a fish. You know, that goes to show you this is a lure that I won so many tournaments on growing up was just a grub. You know, fishing it with just a single combination, and now with the Alabama rig, windy conditions out here today, a typical post front deal, but bass will still bite. You know, you put a lure in front of them that they want, you can still catch them. I can't tell you how many fish I've caught. You know, this is a great lure to get kids involved, probably more so on just a single hook. Fishing a grub is a real simple deal. It's just casting it out there and reeling it in. If you're fishing it on a single set by itself, or like we are here with multiple, you know, grubs on there on an Alabama rig, it's just a great way to catch them. You just throw out there and reel in, and it can be a dominant tournament situation. Just a lot of different aspects you can do with that lure. You know, we've got the wind coming in here The cool thing about a grub, I could take it, put it on spinning tackle if the water was a lot clearer. I know at Table Rock Lake, that's a huge technique over there in the Ozarks area, swimming a grub on light line, or you can take a situation where the water's really stained up like this and fish a grub on an Alabama rig. You know, if this wind wasn't blowing in and it was a lot calmer, I'd probably have it just on a single grub. But man, with this wind and all this watercolor, the Alabama rig is really the deal. One thing I love about this big Z9, man, you get out in water like this, it's no big deal. You get days like this where it's bumpy and choppy, a lot of times that really gets them going. Now we've got about probably a 3-foot chop out here. And by the time we landed that fish and got him unhooked and released him, the wind had done blew us probably 20 or 30 yards. Instead of turning around and making a lot of hull slap and a lot of noise, we're gonna crank up, go well around it, and come back through that spot again. A lot of times, you know, more than one fish can really be stacked up on a spot.
There we go. Oh yeah, that's another good one.
Oh yes. Oh yes, yes, yes. Man, they're built good. That water's cooling down, and man, yes. I have 2 of them. That's so cool. They go through and just go right through the entire school. Man, that's pretty. I love all the colors in a bass. Oh yes, awesome. Oh yes, that is so cool. You know, one thing about the spring and the fall of the year when the water temperature's cool like it is here in the 60s, don't get so concerned about being, you know, in deep water or near deep water, especially when you get, there we go, some wind. Oh yeah, that's another good one. Well, I see a lot of people get so caught up in being near deep water. You know, how I'm fishing this application with the Alabama rig set up, you know, I'm casting this lure to the bank. These bass, when you get wind and it really starts pushing them toward the bank, you know, you've got to get close to the banks. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to get my lure right up there tight and really fish it off, you know, and as I come away from the bank, I start slowing it down a little bit, letting it get a little deeper, and man, it's just a technique that works really well. That is cool. Those fish are up there in just 1.5 feet of water. They are so shallow. Oh yeah, man, that's cool. They are up there just extremely shallow. We talk so much about breaks and drops. And a lot of times, you know, the shad, when you get a really cool down like what we've got, you know, I'm out here in my jacket, it's north wind, it's pretty cold out here, and it really stuns those shad. And they don't swim near as good. They don't handle a sudden drop in temperature like that. And then it'll put them right up there shallow where you can take advantage of that.
People ask me all the time what I like to do in the off season. For me, I love taking my kids fishing. You know, that time that we spend on the water, whether it's on a river, on a lake, wherever it may be, those times that we spend together making memories, that's stuff that I'll never forget, and I hope they won't either. For me, I know whenever my dad took me out as a kid, he instilled that love of the great outdoors in me, and it's something that has honestly, in my opinion, allowed me to be a professional fisherman. I love being outside, I love competing, and I love chasing those little green fish all around this country, and I want my kids to as well.
It's so neat to me personally, having all the memories and tournament history with a lure 20 years ago that is still working great today. There's a lot of technology in lures, and we see things trending all the time. It's so cool to get these bass to bite on something that I used even as a kid. There we go. Oh yeah. Oh man, I love when they jump like that. The cool thing about fishing a grub is it's not seasonal the way a lot of lures are. You know, you can take this application and catch them in the springtime, you can catch them in the fall, and it's a great technique when fishing in the wintertime also. Placing it on an Alabama rig, which is an umbrella rig style system, really shows a lot of flash. It gets a lot of those grubs in the water, and a lot of the bass that you catch will actually have a couple of those in there at the same time where they go through and they just eat the whole bait ball. I've also fished a grub on Table Rock Lake over 50 and 60 foot of water where that timber comes up to about 30 foot of water and just slowly swimming that grub through that standing timber. So there's a lot of different applications. It is so versatile. It catches spotted bass, it catches smallmouth bass, and it obviously catches largemouth bass as well. Those bass, you know, they're looking up at that and they see, it just looks like a pot of shad going through there and they just run through them. You know, you'll see that while we're out here fishing. You'll see bass just dart through those shad. And I really believe it's almost like a whale feeding. You know, they just open their mouth and swim through it real hard and take 3 or 4 down and then go back down. It's pretty cool that, you know, I grew up fishing a grub so much on the Tennessee River. It's just a great smallmouth and largemouth technique. And I never would have thought that we'd be fishing it like this. It's just a cool way to fish. A lot of debate on an Alabama rig on the tournament trails, and when you got a lure that the guy says catches them too good, let's not use it, that's a heck of a lure. I think the rule's kind of silly, to be honest with you. You know, I got into fishing because I love to catch them, and this lure flat out catches them. I think one of the biggest keys when fishing this rig, regardless if you're fishing a grub by itself or on an Alabama rig, is to use a screw lock jig head. This is an Elite Series jig head made by Swampers, and I chose white here. We actually fished with black today, but I chose white to show you how it rigs, just to give a little contrast on the bait. But when you put it on there, bring it down about 1 inch into the lure, and then bring it out, push it up, and then this is just a screw lock. This is so important to keep that lure up on there. You know, as we got bit today and we were catching those fish, I never once had to push that back up on there. That is an application that's going to allow you to fish this technique regardless if it's by itself or on an Alabama rig, and it's not going to pull down. You can see I'm pulling that thing out, but I actually have to rip it to bring that lure off of that jig head. I like braided line when fishing this application. I believe with all the flash and all of the grubs coming through the water, all of the tails spinning, they don't focus in on the line. Even though braided line is not transparent, I find that I don't get any less strikes by using braid, and it's going to give you a lot more power. And when you're getting hung up, you're going to be able to get that lure free and not lose your bait. It's just a great combination. What we've got, this is just a 4-inch tournament series grub made by Bass Pro Shops. And regardless of what you use, get something that you got confidence in. You know, some grubs come and they don't have a big enough head on them. And up front, there's not enough body there to get that screw lock on. I don't like a grub that tapers at the head. I like one that's flat at the very end of it, and that's what that grub does. It just stays rigged properly. A lot of times you can get a lure that's gonna catch fish really good, but it doesn't stay rigged on your hook good. And this is one application. When you've got 5 of them coming through the water, you don't wanna be constantly rigging it. Having that thick head that the Tournament Series grub has allows that lure to stay up on the body a whole lot better. These are number 2 willow leaves. It gives a lot of flash as it's coming through the water, and it really just creates more of a bait ball, bait fish looking situation. Oh, smallmouth. You don't think he's eating shad? Look at that. Oh, it was still hungry. That's cool. New advancements are always happening in the sport of bass fishing. And when you combine something new with something from the past that's tried and true, you might just find something that's really special.
Here's one. Oh yeah. Here's a fast fact for you. How do you carry 20 or 30 rods in a rod locker without getting them all tangled? I like to use rod sleeves. As you can see, you can pull them out easy, and this thing helps protect your reel, your rod, and keeps the other rods from tangling in them. So if you want to carry more rods than the standard organizer holds, try using rod socks. It really helps keep your rods free from tangles and damage while you're traveling and storing them for long distances.
Vertically fishing a jig is a great way to catch them, and you can greatly increase your successes by adding a trailer. But which one? KVD shows us in Bass School 101.
You know, I love a jig for fishing offshore structure. What's great about it is year-round, it's a bass catching tool. If you want to be successful with a football jig or a structure jig like this though, you got to make sure you have the right trailer for the situation you're faced with, and that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, this jig's down on the bottom. You're really trying to imitate a crawfish or, you know, a bluegill, something right down on the bottom. So I want to make sure that I got the proper trailer for that time of the year and that scenario. Like we have right now, you know, I've got clear water conditions and it's the heat of the summer. You know, the water temperature is warm. The bass's metabolism is a lot higher. I want a trailer that has a lot more action. You want more vibration, you want more sound. Something that has a moving tail, a lot of thump to it is what you want when it's summer. You know, the other scenario is the exact opposite. You know, we're talking about winter time, late fall, early spring. Water temperature has dropped. Everything in nature has slowed down. Their metabolism is slower. Their movements are slower. So I'm gonna use the same jig, but what I'm gonna do is add a trailer to it that is a lot subtler. I don't want that thumping action. I don't want that extra vibration. That's what's natural under these conditions. When I'm rigging my jig and I want that subtler action, I'm gonna use a chunk style trailer like this. Instead of just threading it on the hook like this, I wanna make that bait more compact. So I'm gonna just thread it all the way on, all the way right up behind the jig. That way I have a really nice profile. And again, when that's going through the water, the action is there, but it's very subtle. And that's what you want when the water's a little cooler and the bite's gonna be tougher. You know, when the water's warmer, I wanna be able to fish faster, I wanna cover water. I want that jig to help draw the bass to it. That's why this Rage Craw is so good. It's got so much movement to those legs that it creates a lot of vibration and disturbance in the water. I'm just gonna thread it on there so it really hangs out the back of the jig. And that just allows those tails to really kick and move. It's not being affected by the skirt. And I can hop that jig up off the bottom and that thing's gonna swim all the way back down. When you're fishing when the water's warmer, a lot of times that's what you gotta do to trigger that fish to react to it. You want that extra movement. Having the right jig trailer for the time of the year and the conditions that you're faced with makes all the difference in the world in the number of bass you're gonna catch.
Hello and welcome to the giant new Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World here in Tacoma, Washington. We've got a great show in store for you today, so be sure and hit that record button so you can watch it again and again. Kevin Van Dam is a master at fishing square bill crankbaits, and he's going to show us his secrets to use this technique on really big fish as we go in depth. Then, do you know a kid who wants to get started tournament fishing, or you may even want to go pro yourself? Today, Rick Clun shows us how to get started in Bass School 101. But first up, Edwin Evers shows us a recipe for a great day on the water. It's 1 part water current, 1 part lake point, and 1 part fall transition. It's this week's Fishing in 5.
What's unique about this lake here, you know, all the docks are relatively, you know, 1 to 3-4 foot. They're all very, very shallow. This is a natural lake instead of a man-made lake. And they're all portable or movable docks. You know, they have to take these docks out because this lake's gonna freeze in the winter. There's hundreds, thousands of docks on this lake. I don't have time to fish every one of them, so I've gotta fish the high spots. There's no way a person could go down and fish every dock here, so you have to be selective. I picked out the docks that stood out to me, whether they were bigger, deeper, stuck further off the bank, isolated. Anything that was different about those docks, those are the ones that I keyed in on, and those are the ones that held multiple groups of fish. There's one. Man, that fish was shallow. These points just create little pinch points, you know, and there's a lot of current that goes through this lake. And every spot that there's a point, it just makes it that much more current that has to go around it. Just to further illustrate what I'm talking about, the lake's wider, and then this point comes in and it narrows, funnels everything down, and that's why those fish are sitting right there. It's prime example of why a point works. It funnels it down and it makes it a great ambush point for those bass. There's another one. It's so easy just to fish the ends of the dock. They're everywhere and they're getting bigger. If you come around those docks and get in behind them where it's tougher to get that boat, tougher to make those casts, a lot of times that's where a lot of fish are sitting. Prime example why you want a trailer hook. Look at that. That fish got my trailer hook. Now we're here on the down current side. You know, the current's flowing from my left to the right around this point, and all those fish were sitting right where the current would be the greatest, right on the tip point of that point. On a lake like this with docks and grass, those docks actually make a hole in the grass. So it's a perfect hole, perfect ambush point, and it's another great reason why those docks hold so many fish. Pretty fish. Guys, I keep stressing to you, different, different, different. Don't just go down fishing a stretch of docks. Pick something different about each dock. This dock's got a couple different things about it. One, it's on a point, but if you'll look right there, there's a little feeder creek coming in. So it's always got water coming in. Thus, that's why there was a school of fish right here. You know, I've had 4 or 5 of them blowing up shad right here. You know, I had a whole bunch of bites right here, but that's what's different. And I always try to determine something different about each dock. So now I know when I'm running down this bank, I see another feeder creek coming in, hey, I need to stop and fish that dock. You can see right here how shallow that is. I mean, I'm kicking up mud. That's one thing about fall time fishing, guys. You cannot fish shallow enough. You know, I started out this morning fishing quite a bit deeper, you know, offshore structure and rock piles, and, you know, just really wasn't happening at all. And we've been shallow now 15, 20 minutes and caught quite a few fish, so it's definitely where they're wanting to be. Okay, we just figured out feeder creeks. I'm gonna move on down the lake. The next dock I am gonna stop at is gonna be that furthest one down there. Couple reasons. It's out further than any other, and one of the reasons is it's got the bigger boat than any other dock down through here. It's got a big, heavy fiberglass boat, so they had to build that dock out further to get deeper water. It's got bigger pilings and it's got a lot of shade over every other dock on this stretch. So that's my next dock. Hopefully the next one I'm gonna catch one on. Oh, that's a big one. I can't stress to you enough how important it is anytime you're fishing a reaction bait to have you something to follow a missed strike or a missed fish up. You know, for me, I just used a Z-Hog. I'd flip it in there real quick, you know, after I missed one or one boiled on it and didn't get it. I could always generally catch that fish with that follow-up bait. That ain't the big one. Always important to have a good follow-up lure. That's not the one that big one that I just had, but it's about 3 bites on this dock, and they're ahead, 2 of those 3. But I got that one. It's an awesome dock right here. You know, what makes docks so great is those fish can just go from deeper water to shallower water just in that short amount of time, and they've always got good cover over their head. They feel protected, and it's just great cover for them. It's a year-round fish producer.
Kevin Van Dam has a crankbait that produces fish after fish, and it's a square bill. But when you want to catch big fish, you really got to supersize it. Here's my good friend KVD with today's In Depth.
One of the best ways to catch a big fish, use a big bait.
Here's one. A good one. Oh, went right at the boat. Oh, got him with just one hook.
That right there is why you throw a big square bill. And look how white he is. You can tell, you know, that the water clarity is pretty dirty in here, and that's why it's just perfect, you know, for a square bill. When I see dirty water and a lot of shallow cover, it's one of the key things that I think about. Let's let him go. You know, one of the things that I love to do is I love to fish shallow cover and things, and You know, in the last 10 years or so, square bill crankbaits have really come into their own. You know, I've won a lot of money with them, won a lot of tournaments, but you know, we have a whole series of them now, and this is a brand new one. This is a really big one. Big bass like to eat big bait. You know, they're gonna eat big bluegills, they're gonna eat gizzard shad. So even this bait, as big as it is not that big compared to what they eat on an everyday basis. There's one. Nice one. Well, he came right off that lay down log, and you know, the great thing about these baits, or you know, a square bill crankbait, is for a bait that has you know, 2 treble hooks on it like that, it's very weedless. You know, I mean, that bill being all square like that, I mean, this thing bulldozes into the cover. And this bait, especially being a big bait, really displaces a ton of water, and that bill keeps the, you know, the bait from hanging up. I mean, you're gonna get hung up some, but that's the key to it, is you gotta throw it like a bulldozer right into the thickest cover. This was the perfect scenario to throw that Strike King KVD 8.0. I mean, big fish, big bait fish, really dirty water, and warm water. You know, when it's hot, summertime, the fish's metabolism's higher. They're looking for a big meal, and this big crankbait is just the ticket. You know, there's certain times of the year and there's certain conditions where I just kind of automatically want to go to a bigger profile crankbait, you know, to go up to this 8.0 or to tie on a 2.5 instead of a little 1.0. And, you know, during the post spawn, that's one key time. You know, right after the bass spawn, a lot of the bluegills are spawning then, and that's a time when you want to throw a bigger profile bait. Dirtier the water, the more I like a bait that has a lot of water displacement, a lot of movement to it. Day in, day out, you know, these large profile baits are what I want to go to, you know, in dirty conditions like that. And then any other time that I know the bass are eating big forage, you know, you catch a good fish on something else, on another lure, and he's got a big gizzard shad sticking out of his throat. That's, you know, tells you that they're eating big forage. Good one. Oh, that's more like it right there. Nice isolated piece of cover. And that right there is why you use big tackle. You know, in a place like this that has quality fish, you want to throw a bait that can catch them. You know, I mean, a lot of times, you know, if I'm seeing real small bait fish in that, I'm going to use a small bait. But, you know, when you got the potential to catch big bass like this right here, you got to have the right tackle. So now for me, you know, I got a whole system for throwing crankbaits. And, you know, for a square bill rod, you want something a little bit different than you would for a deep diving crankbait. First and foremost, you know, I like a composite rod. You know, that softer glass mixed with the graphite kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You get, you know, that softer reaction so that you can work that bait through the limbs. When the fish takes it, they're going to get the bait deeper. And when you're fighting a fish, they're going to, you know, you're going to have a lot better chance to land them. And you get the feel of that graphite. So if I'm fishing grass or something like that, I can tell if there's a little bit of grass caught on the hooks or anything like that. And for, you know, accuracy, you want a shorter rod. So today, you know, I'm throwing a 7-foot medium heavy action rod because I'm throwing this big Strike King 8.0 KVD square bill. Well, I got great control with this bait. I can make a good accurate underhand cast in a soft presentation. I match it with my signature cranking reel. I like a 5:3 to 1 gear ratio. And then here, I'm throwing 25-pound fluorocarbon. I'm not messing around. I've got big cover. I got a chance to catch big fish. This is a shallow water fishery, so you know, I'm gonna throw big line. If I need to get a bait a little bit deeper, I'll go to lighter line. But big baits like this, you know, the lightest I'd really ever wanna go to is maybe 14-pound line. And that's if I was trying to get the bait down to some deeper grass or deeper brush. But day in, day out, you want heavy tackle and you want equipment that's gonna help you, you know, do the job. And a good setup like this really makes a big difference when you're throwing square bills. Let me show you some of the other square bills that I have that I like to use, and also talk a little bit about color. So, you know, today I'm throwing the new 8.0. This is the biggest square bill that we've made yet to date. And, you know, the idea is to have a big profile bait that moves a ton of water to really target big fish, you know, but this is not that big a bait to even catch. You know, I've caught a lot of smaller fish with it, so it moves a lot of water. So real dirty conditions like this, it's a great choice. You know, my favorite all-around bait that I throw more than anything else is the 1.5. I mean, it's the perfect profile. It matches a threadfin shad, you know, size for size really well. And, you know, this is just a great crankbait. I love to fish it in a lot of different situations. I won the Bassmasters Classic in New Orleans with this bait, so it's real special. I mean, this exact bait right here is one of the ones I use. Then, the 2.5, which is really considered a bigger bait, and you can see I've got a box full of them right here. This bait is, pretty good sized profile bait, but look how much bigger the 8.0 is than that. I mean, it's just, I knew I needed a bait that had a bigger profile and a bigger signature in the water, when you're pushing it through these dirty areas. So I've caught a lot of fish on this. This has been my go-to big bass crankbait before. Now I have a new one, but again, you can see I carry a lot of different colors. And these baits catch them in all water clarities. Today we're fishing shallow stained water, but on a lot of other days, I might be fishing someplace where it's real clear. So I want to have natural colors. So I want to, pick a color that's going to be seasonally correct and also matches the water clarity and the forage in the system that I'm using. In the square bill, anytime I've got, a shallow water situation, shallow cover, anything, grass, wood, rocks, docks, I'm going to have one tied on. It's just a great bait that catches a lot of fish.
The reason so many professional anglers fish a square bill crankbait is because you can cover a lot of water with them and catch quality fish. But there are just certain times that the fish want a bigger profile bait than just a standard square bill. I can tell you, when I'm fishing my home waters on Pickwick Lake, back in those cypress trees and those bass are feeding on those really large bluegill, I want a really big square bill crankbait.
When you've got a situation like we had today, isolated cover, there's laydowns, there's rocks, ledges, and the water's dirty, you can't see everything that's out there. And throwing a square bill crankbait like this helps you find a lot of that cover under the water and find those places where the fish might be at. There is a good one. Wow, right in that tree. That's what you want, if you can find a nice isolated piece of cover like that. Put my power poles down. You can see there's just one isolated tree laying here on this flat, and that's the perfect place you're going to find bass setting up. With water dirty like this, bass always do two things. I mean, that's a pretty one. Let's let him go. One thing I've definitely learned is, again, when you have dirty water, bass are always going to relate shallower to whatever structure that they're on. And when I mean structure, I'm talking about a depth change, whether it's a break, a ledge, a shallow bank. Structure is a depth change in the bottom. Cover is this log, is the grass, is the rocks, things like that on top of it. So, I mean, those fish are not going to be swimming around 4 or 5 feet off that tree. They're going to be right against it. If my arm is that tree, they're going to be right against it. So, you really want to pick it apart and run your crankbait down each limb. And if you can, right down that main trunk. So each one of these, you can kind of look with your glasses and see some of these limbs. So I want to kind of run it and right down those limbs, and I'll just hold the rod tip up and just work it right through there. Just kind of finesse that bait right through the cover. You want it to be over the top of it. If you fish it too fast through there, you're going to get hung up a lot. By just kind of working your way, I call it worming your way through there, you're going to get that bait through there, and you're going to trigger a lot of strikes. Stop and start it when you hit a limb. Just try to pick each little angle out where that bait's running down the limb, hits the little fork, stop it, and continue that retrieve. And make a lot of casts. When you got a great piece of cover like this, you want to make multiple casts. Sometimes it's going to take 3 or 4 to get that fish to bite. In the end, you have a lot of choices when you're out there fishing. Even in a situation like this, there's other lures that you could possibly throw, but a square bill crankbait is just such a great tool to not only trigger an inactive bass, but to catch a big fish. And to have a big bait like this, to have that option, it really displaces a lot of water. I mean, this 8.0 is not that big. I mean, you think about it, it's 3 or 4 inches long. They eat a lot bigger stuff than this, so it's not so overpowering that you're scaring bass with it. This is a great tool when you've got an opportunity to catch big fish, and it's one of my favorites. There's one, big one. That is a big one. Don't want to boat flip that one. There is what you throw the big square bills for. You can throw a lot of different sizes of baits, but when you're targeting places that have big fish like that right there. That's, you know, what you really, you know, why you want to throw those bigger baits. That's what you want to throw. Nice. Nice, that's the way to finish the day up right there. I love square bills, and you know, now that we have all the different sizes, from the little small ones all the way up to the brand new, you know, big 8.0, I've got something for every situation.
You know, when using these small swim baits out on these grass clumps, I really like to keep it down there as close to ticking the top of that grass as possible. Now, sometimes you're going to bog down in one of those clumps that's a little higher than the other ones, and all I'll do is just give it a quick jerk of the rod to free that bait from that grass. And a lot of times, that's when you trigger those big fish to strike, because they'll be sitting in that clump of grass just waiting for something to fall in front of their face. And when it does, they got one or two choices. You know, they either got to bite the lure or let it go by. So a lot of times that's going to trigger those strikes instead of just a constant, steady motion.
To fish on the tournament trail, sure, you've got to be passionate about bass fishing, but you also need a lot of people behind you that believe in you as well. Today, Rick Clunn starts a two-part class on how to get started in Bass School 101.
Probably the most rewarding thing I've seen in the last 40 years of my fishing is this new influx of young anglers into the sport. It's something we really missed in the early days, because unlike other sports, we didn't have little leagues to recruit these kids into the sport. In the past, it was just a father or your uncle or a friend that took you fishing, and then you got interested in it. But in the past 5, 6, 7 years, we've had a lot of colleges now forming bass fishing teams. And now the high schools are following that same model. And really, it's exploded. I mean, literally, there's every week and day I hear about more and more of these high schools and colleges getting involved. It also presents some issues for individuals like myself that have really benefited from the sport, from sponsors, and the whole sport as a whole. I would have given anything to have had a model that I could have went to when I was young, and it didn't exist, so I made a lot of mistakes. Now, these kids are asking questions like, you know, how do I get better, you know, and then but eventually if they get in competitive fishing, you know, how do I get sponsors? And that's where I'm kind of helping some of the young anglers, high school anglers right now, is how to do that, because there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. First of all, realize that you're not entitled to anything. And then your long-term performance will dictate to that company whether you will be a credible person to put with your company. Write an introductory letter to potential sponsors. Anyone in your area, regionally at first, and then even nationally later, but write letters to them. But the key in that letter is don't ask for anything. These sponsors are getting letters every day, people asking for something. You're not entitled to anything, okay? Everything has to be earned. It's dictated by your eventual long-term performance. So write them a letter, say, look, I don't want anything, I just want to introduce myself, I want to develop a relationship with you. Then send them updates. Send them relevant updates on how your fishing is going, the tournaments you fished, and how you did, and the style that you were using, so they can learn about you while you're learning about them. Several things in fishing are important. Okay, performance, yes. Knowledge, yes. But developing that human relationship may be the most important of all.
Hey everyone, welcome to Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World in Oklahoma City. We've got a great show planned for you today, so let's get right to it. Today, Brian Snowden shows us how he's going to approach isolated patches of grass. He's going to use a swim bait and try to lure them out from under the canopy on today's In Depth. Then Rick Clunn finishes up his two-part series on getting the youth involved in tournament fishing. Don't miss Bass School 101. But first, Kevin Van Dam breaks out his square-billed crankbaits for shallow water bass. It's a feeding frenzy. This is Fishing in 5.
Looky here. That's what they're eating right there. You know, I've been getting quite a few bites with this crankbait, and you can see why, because it's exactly the same size and color as the shad. God, it's so shallow, you wouldn't think they'd be up there, but I mean, when you got conditions like this, you got to be prepared to fish ultra, ultra shallow. I mean, the water's dirty, the lake is super low, and there's shad everywhere. I mean, but crankbait that you can run super, super shallow is one of the most efficient ways to fish. I mean, this water's dirty. It's definitely, you know, to the point where you want to have a spinnerbait or a crankbait, something that displaces some water. But I mean, there's birds everywhere, there's bait everywhere. The water's real dirty. You can't see 6 inches down, but it's alive. There's activity everywhere. Yeah. Another nice one. I mean, you can see how white they are. That's from the clarity of the water. And what I'm doing here is, you know, I'm sitting out here in the middle of this flat, but it's super shallow. I mean, it's not a foot deep right out here to the center of the cove in front of me. And, you know, this crankbait right here, this is a 1.5 XS, and it's just, you know, built to run less than 2 feet deep. All this whole flat is full of shad. So you got to have a bait that stays up high in the water column, something that's not down in that mud. So a normal square bill just runs too deep. I mean, these fish are in less than 2 foot of water. So let's see if there's any more out there. It's just a big underwater point here. What happens this time of the year in the fall, the water temperatures start to fall and these shad move back into these creeks. You know, if you got a steeper looking bank that looks better, looks like it has deeper water on it, that's not where the bass want to be. They want to be on these, I don't know, I call it ugly water, on these just flat mud banks and just real subtle points and things like that. They're just roaming around following these pods of shad. There's a big one. Gosh. Oh, he come off. You know, the thing about this crankbait right here is it's built to have a real erratic presentation, even when it's not touching the bottom. You know, it's, oh gosh, I'm throwing in the same spot and I keep getting bit. And that's what it does, that crankbait, it wanders. And it, you know, it just, you can watch your line and see it's going left, right, and it's very erratic. So that's one of the things that I really like about it. And we built into the bait on purpose. There we go, another little one. I'm just making the same cast over and over, and I bet that's the 8th bite I've had, even though a lot of them are little ones. I just jumped off about a 3-pounder just a second ago, so I'm gonna keep throwing. Once you get them fired up, you wanna get back in there, try to make it as erratic as possible to try to get these fish to just flare on it. So I'll burn it along and just stop it. What every fish has been related to in this creek is a really shallow shelf, 1 to 2 foot deep max. And then right where it falls off, into that deeper water, into that 5 or 6 foot is where they're hanging, is just up on the edge. They're just waiting for shad to come right along that edge. See my line? That is wall-to-wall shad right there. You know, the thing about it, right now, it's later in the afternoon, and that's when it's the best. You know, I mean, this pattern, if you're gonna go in this stained water in the fall of the year like this, it's actually better in the afternoon in a sunny, flat, calm day. And you know, that's what happens this time of the year. You know, in the fall, the mornings are cooler, and in the afternoon when it warms up, everything comes alive. Good one. It's getting late, but you know, you can look around the whole cove and it's still going on. And the clouds are coming in, just another good solid keeper. You know, anytime you got, you know, this much shad in an area, you know you're gonna have bass. And with the lake drawn down like this, it just really limits the opportunities for them to be on the visible cover. You know, there's just not any stumps or rocks and things like that in the water. So they're using the best available ambush point, and that's just these really shallow, super flat points. So anytime you're out in the fall looking for a good solid pattern, find the bait fish, find the birds, and you're gonna find the bass.
When it comes to fishing isolated grass, there are a few steps one needs to take to find these fish. Here's Brian Snowden with today's In Depth.
When you're up north, there's a lot of grass, and what I like to do is really target those smallmouth. And so One of the best ways I found consistently to catch those is with a small swim bait. Oh, here we go. It's a versatile bait because if it's sparse grass, you can use an open exposed hook, or you can fish that weedless in the real thick stuff, depending on the type of lake you're fishing and how thick your grass is. It's summertime up in northern New York, and a lot of great smallmouth fishing up in this area. And one of the things I like to do is I look for grass lines, sandy bottoms, and where that grass line and sandy bottom meet, you're going to get some more sparse vegetation that's out a little further. And what I like to do is take and run a small swim bait in and around those clumps of grass, isolated clumps of grass. And we're only fishing in 7 to 10 feet of water. The water temperature is right at 75 degrees, so it's fairly warm, dead of the summer. But those smallmouth will use that sandy bottom and that grass to ambush bait. This is a technique that I like to use when there's some wind. It really works well for those smallmouth in the summertime, when you want to fish a little shallower and not drop shot or finesse fish out there. And what I'm going to do is just take a 3.5 inch speed shad by Bass Pro Shops, rig it on a lead head or a belly weight if the vegetation is real thick, and I'm going to count it down a few seconds and then start a slow, steady retrieve to trigger those smallmouth to bite. They just think it's a bait swimming by that clumps of grass that we're fishing in 7 to 12 feet of water. When we're talking about an isolated clump of grass, there may still be grass on the bottom that's real short to the bottom, maybe only a foot off, and then you're going to have one that almost looks like a column or a pole that's going to come up, might be 2 feet to 4 feet in diameter, and it's going to come nearly to the surface of the water, and that's what you're looking for. That's a great ambush place for those fish to set up, and this bait, yellow perch, shad, move by, they can just run out of that grass and grab it. As you can see, you can cover a lot of water with it, but you can fish it in the real thick grass as well as the sparse isolated clumps like we did today. Those smallmouth are something. They just never give up. Nothing better than a big smallmouth. Well, that is a pretty smallmouth. Visually, you always want to pay attention when you're up north. The smallmouth will run in little groups and packs, and watch for the seagulls. They'll be diving when those smallmouth get up and start feeding. I'm going to try and make here's one, make a line to where those fish were feeding. Whoa. Oh boy, that's another nice smallmouth. They sure pull. Get him up here. Oh, there we go. Just can't hardly stand that swim bait coming by those isolated clumps of grass. Well, there was a perfect example of being aware of your surroundings. We saw some activity in that area as we were coming toward that little grassy clump, and sure enough, there was a fish by it. One of the things I like to do when you're out here is I do a lot of graphing, structure scanning. So I'm going to pay attention to where that grass kind of breaks off of that solid line and starts becoming clumpy and making, little isolated clumps, because that's really much easier to fish, and it holds those fish, pinpoints those fish, instead of just a solid grass line that runs all the way down the shoreline. And here's what I'm kind of talking about when I'm talking about isolated clumps of grass. You got a nice hard bottom, it's not a solid wall of grass, and then you got these large clumps that come up, columns almost, that come up to the surface. And you got some open areas. Those open areas I really like. The fish are going to lay up against this hard, grassy area, and then they're going to use that open area to feed on the prey. That's what we're looking for, and you can see it both here on the structure scan as well as the standard 2D sonar. Big clumps of grass with open areas around that. This is going to hold those fish right around those clumps of grass, as you can see here, not give them a whole bunch of grass where they can move around, and so you can actually pinpoint where those fish are and where you want to fish. And what I'll do, I'm just going to icon that, hit a waypoint on that clump. I'll just keep on moving down here on all those different clumps. That looks good. I think I'm going to stop and fish this. There we go. Just as I popped it over that clump of grass. Oh, nice one. In the summer months, fish are always active in the morning. And today we were very fortunate. One of the things when you're throwing these small swim baits, you really want to key in on these cloudy, windy days, because that seems to prolong that morning bite, and you'll have it throughout the day if you have enough wind. Dandy smallmouth. The wind really helps this swim bait. You know, it breaks up the sunlight, causes those fish not to be able to notice the bait or see the bait as well, so they don't know that it's artificial. That is the reason why you come up north. Well, this speed shad is a great bait made by Bass Pro Shops. One of the reasons why I like it is the tail. It's real thin, so it has a lot of movement, even a real slow retrieve. And what we're doing, because we're fishing these clumps of grass, not a solid grass line, we're able to get away with an exposed hook, and I'm going to use a nice 4 or 5/0 exposed hook on this bait. One thing I will recommend is always put a little super glue on here to keep that bait in position, because those smallmouth, they'll hit it real aggressively, and then they like to jump a lot. And a little bit later, I'm going to show you, if you got some real thick vegetation, a couple other ways to rig this so you can still work it around that thicker vegetation.
An alternative rigging method to what Brian was using is to use a belly weighted hook. This technique right here makes the bait completely weedless. You can use it around grass, laydowns, docks. The other thing it does is it's a technique or a rigging method to reel it really slow, and it frees the head up a little bit. It's going to have a completely different action than the swim bait Brian was using.
When you're up north, there's a lot of grass, and what I like to do is really target those smallmouth. One of the best ways I've found consistently to catch those is with a small swim bait. I'm going to show you how to rig this setup that we've been using this morning. All you've got is a lead head. Depending on how deep you want it to run, you can vary anywhere from an 1/8 all the way up to a 3/8 ounce size. I recommend using the 4/0 to 5/0 hook. This one we're actually using today is a 1/4 ounce, and this is just a Bass Pro Speed Shad. And what I like to do is I'll just thread it on here, try and keep it as centered and as straight as you can, so when it's reeling and coming through the water, it stays upright. I'm going to put that all the way through, just about to the end of this hook hiding area that's built into the bait. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze right here, and I'm going to get some super glue. And all you got to do is just add a little bit to the lead head. That's going to help hold that bait on there as you pop it and rip it through that grass, or when you get a smallmouth that starts jumping around. So just a little dab of super glue on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide that all the way up on there and allow it to dry a little bit. But as you can see, you want a nice straight bait that allows that bait to swim through the water correctly, keep that hook upright. The other way I like to rig this is if I want a little more movement, say those fish are really aggressive and I want to move a lot of movement, or I want to be able to feel that bait where the grass is really sparse, I'll use a scrounger head. This has just got a little bill in the front of it, which actually causes the whole thing to wobble. So instead of just the tail movement, it'll actually feel more like a crankbait or a single willow leaf spinnerbait, where you'll feel that thumping in your rod. And sometimes overcast conditions, when the fish are a little more aggressive, this head will outproduce just the standard head because it's a lot more subtle. The other thing I like to do is I'll actually show you how to rig up with a belly weight. It's got a keeper on the front. You actually just screw it into the center of the bait. And then what I like to do is just bring this in, and I'm going to pinch it up a little bit and come straight as possible through the top, completely through the bait. And then what I'm going to do is just take and push this hook back in that little hook keeper right there in the center of the back. So now you've got a nice weedless straight bait that you'll be able to throw in the thickest of cover, but you can still, swims upright, and you can still work those holes in isolated grass if you need to, even out amongst that sparser grass. It's real important to pay attention where you get those bites in those clumps of grass. What I like to do is put waypoints on the area where you see those clumps of grass when you're idling using your structure scan, and then also waypoint those areas when you get a bite. And as you can see, we just kind of follow the same path, maybe moving over a little bit to the left or right, and coming with the wind, making casts around in those various areas where those grass clumps are. And if you keep, a lot of waypoints there, you'll be able to really dial in which clumps they're using the best and make those accurate casts to trigger those bites. With this technique, it's real important to pay attention to the weight that you're actually using on your lead head. You don't want it to be too heavy where it's always bogging down in the grass, because you'll never be able to rip it free. But you want it to get down there where you can actually tick the top of that grass. And as you can see, I'll be reeling it kind of slow, and then I'll start to feel it bog down in the grass, and I'm going to give it a little jerk to get that grass off of the bait. So one of the things to pay close attention to is the weight you're using. Use the lightest one you can get away with to keep it down there where it just barely ticks the top of that grass. You feel that grass start to bog down, and you give it a pop to loosen that bait from that grass, and those fish are gonna, you know, fire out of there and get it. All right, here's one. You know, when you're doing this technique, it's really important to have a nice rod you can make long casts with. This is a 7-foot, 1-inch, medium heavy St. Croix Legend tournament. And I'm gonna use a, you know, fairly fast gear ratio. This is a 6:4 to 1. And you know, like I say, depending on how heavy a lure you're throwing, you're gonna have to adjust the line size, but mainly 12 to 14 pound works great for this technique based on the amount of cover you're fishing. You know, definitely the heavier the cover and the bigger the fish, the more you're gonna use that heavier line. Those smallmouth are something. They just never give up. So when you've got warm water, grass, and smallmouth, definitely try to work that outside clumps with a small swim bait. I think you'll be really surprised with the results you can get. Even when the fish seem like they're not biting a spinnerbait or something that's moving, you can still trick them with this subtle presentation with a small swim bait. Boy, a little swim bait, isolated grass clumps, that's all you need to have a great time up in New York.
Here's a fast fact for you. I love fishing swim baits, and man, they can really catch some really big fish at times. But if you're noticing that you're getting a lot of bites and you think the fish are eating the bait, but you're just not getting hooked up good, one thing I like to do is carry some scent with me, put a little bit of scent on the bait and rub it in on the bait a little bit. You want to make sure that fish gets that, but also make sure that you put some on the bottom of it where the hook goes through. That's going to make it a lot slicker to where that bait will slide down, get out of the way of the hook, and that hook will get in the fish where you want it to be.
I know many of us tournament pros can make it look so easy out on the tournament trail, but for guys that are just getting started or up and coming anglers, building confidence is one of the biggest keys. Let Rick Clunn help you out today in Bass School 101.
You know, these are really exciting times. We've got incredible technology, better than we've ever had in the sport of fishing. And we've also got an influx of young anglers from high schools and colleges that I've never seen before. But there are some concerns that I'm seeing even at the elite level of fishing right now. And then that's the way the technology is being used. You know, Einstein made the statement that technology can either save us or destroy us, depending on how we use it. And in a much smaller level, obviously, I see that same thing happening as a fisherman. It can make you a better fisherman, or it can destroy you as an angler if you use it incorrectly. What I mean by that, and I'm going to use GPS as the obvious example. GPS now is a tremendously accurate way to find your way around a lake and to mark fishing spots and go to certain key parts of the underground topography of that lake. But the problem is with it, it kind of reverses back to the old days. A lot of anglers are just getting a lot of GPS coordinates, and now they're just running and fishing those spots and really not understanding the seasonal patterns, why the fish are there or when they're there, or even if they do catch fish, why they're even catching them. So this is really what I want to advise you, is to become conscious of that and become conscious that this is a great tool, but don't become overly dependent upon it. You still need to learn all the science of the sport, the seasonal patterns, how to locate fish on your own. You know, what is the changing weather going to do to those fish? And because that's ultimately the key, because I don't care how great an athlete you are, if you don't have self-confidence, you're not going to be 70% of that athlete. And so the self-confidence comes from the intellectual side, not from the technology side. So again, remember that. The GPS is great, but don't allow it to become your master. To tie the two parts together, what we've been trying to help you with is how to develop good relationships with potential sponsors. And remember, do not allow technology to get in your way. Use it to complement your own ability.
Hey everyone, this is the magnificent Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World in Bristol, Tennessee. If you've not visited this store yet, you've got to, because it's awesome. Hey, in today's show, we get to spend time with a true legend in bass fishing. Stacy King is going to talk to us about some lessons he's learned in a career that spanned over 60 years. It's today's In Depth. Then Bass School 101, basic facts that truly makes a difference. KVD takes us to school in Bass School 101. But first, Bryden Snowden takes us up to New York and shows us how a topwater frog works. Just as good there as anywhere. It's today's Fishing in 5.
Oh, there we go. Well, today we're going to be using a technique for post-spawn fish. The fish are just now getting off the beds, and we've got a lot of cover, shallow cover. We've got vegetation, we've got in the form of grass, and then we've got a lot of laydowns. We're going to be throwing a frog to try and trigger some of these fish that are just moving off of the areas where they've spawned, and they're holding up on these shallow pieces of cover as they get ready to move out to their summertime homes. So we're going to try and cover some water and see what those fish are relating to, either the grass or the laydowns. We've got a cold water environment here. They call it a lake, but its fish is much more like a river, and they use it for power generation. And the water coming out of the bottom of the lake is a constant about 42, 45 degree water, and as it moves down through here, it stays relatively cool all year. You know, when you're fishing this vegetation, I like to kind of just hopping forward when it's that real thick stuff. One of the best things I found though, when you get to these open areas, then I want to slow it down and I'm going to actually twitch that rod to make that frog walk side to side, just like a Zara spook. And that side to side motion gives him a lot of action, but doesn't move him forward real fast. And those holes are areas you really want to key in on, because a lot of times they're going to wait right around those edges to ambush prey. And when that frog's sitting in there and you got him walking side to side, that's when they're going to get it. Oh, nice one. Coming out from under there. Boy, he got that frog good. Well, we had the rain pick up. You know, it's been cloudy this morning, and now we're gonna come in here and show you a few things about the frog. One of the things I really like to look for is a soft-bodied frog. Now, these aren't going to last as long as the harder-bodied frogs, but your hookup ratio is going to be tremendously more on the soft-bodied frogs. You're going to go through a few more frogs, but for me, when you're trying to catch fish to make a living, you want them to land every bite you get. And as you noticed out there, when we're working this frog, we like to do a lot of walking of the frog. And what I found is when it comes out of the package, these little tails, they're going to be considerably longer. And a good rule of thumb for me is just to actually fold this up, and right when it's flush with the nose of the frog where you're going to actually tie your line to, I just take a pair of scissors and cut the excess off. It allows you to walk that frog much easier. And when you're walking that frog, you're going to use real quick little twitches of the rod to cause that frog to move back and forth. It's going to be much easier for you to walk that frog when you're first starting out frog fishing. Boy, that isolated little patch of grass. You know, it's real important when you're fishing these kind of conditions is to always use braid. As you can see, that fish came through a lot of grass, and that braid just really helps you cut through that grass and get those fish in. You know, a lot of times when you get these cloudy, overcast conditions, those fish are going to roam in that grass more. A lot of times I like frog fishing when it's actually really sunny, because they'll get underneath that grass and use that shade as their ambush point. Today we've got a situation where there's clouds, so the bites we've been getting have been around the grass, but more of that sparse grass with some open water where they're actually probably moving around and not using that shade because there's no shade for them to use like they would normally do when it's sunny conditions. So when it's sunny, you're really going to fish that thick stuff because those fish will get underneath it. When it gets cloudy like it is, you can still catch a lot of fish on a frog, but you're going to fish a lot more open water just around that grass. When you're frog fishing, you know, an old theory was use heavy stiff rod and braided line. And I really do like the braided line, but as far as a heavy stiff rod, this is a St. Croix 7-1, but it's a medium heavy with an extra fast tip. When you're working a frog, you're really going to want to move it side to side a lot. That extra fast soft tip and allow you to work that frog easier than a real stiff rod. And with the braid, you don't have any stretch, and it really helps cut through that grass, so you're not going to need a real stiff rod because most of your strikes are going to come medium to short range cast. I'm going to use anywhere from 50 to 80 pound braid depending on the size of the fish and how accurate I want to be able to cast. If I want to cast real accurate, I'm going to use that 50 pound braid. If I'm going to be in real thick, heavy stuff and a lot of good quality fish, I'm going to up that to 65 or 80 pound braid. And I like to use a fairly fast retrieve reel. I'm going to use a 6/4 to 1. You're going to want to keep that fish on the surface and not let him bury down in that grass. So that's my setup for frog fishing and what I like to use the best.
For Stacy King, fishing has been a huge part of his storied 60-year career. From a boyhood passion to making his living fishing tournaments, Stacy has truly seen it all. Here's today's In Depth.
I love to bass fish because it's just, I get so much enjoyment from being outside and I just love chasing the quarry.
That old brown worm, he couldn't resist it. Look at the size of that toad. Man, look at her.
There's so many people, you know, especially in my younger life that had great influence on me. My father was ill when I was a little boy and I stayed out with a cousin of his, an old man that loved to hunt and fish, and he got me started. He had a big tackle box full of fishing lures. When I was 5 years old, I loved to look in that tackle box and see those old head and topwater baits. And then as I grew older and, you know, I got in a bass club when I was about 20, 21 years old. And some of the guys in that bass club had a lot of experience fishing, and those guys were great influences on me. One of them that had so much influence on me was Charlie Campbell. When I got to the point where I could start traveling and fishing BASS, Charlie let me room with him for many years. You know, you talk about a guy being a straight shooter and an up front kind of a guy, Charlie Campbell is, and he was a great influence on my life.
That's a catfish.
That can't be a catfish. Look at that, look at the size of that fish. That's a giant. How much does that baby weigh? I've never seen a bass that big.
How about that one?
Man, can you believe that fish? 11 pounds, 2 ounces. That's the biggest one I've ever caught. I'm gonna release her back. Isn't she beautiful? There she goes. Oh, you know, the other day, a friend of mine and I were talking, and he looked at me and he said, "What 60 years of bass fishing taught you?" And I started to throw something back at him, and it just kind of hit me, and I thought about it. You know, there's so many things. And so I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought, you know, here's a few things that might help some of you folks in your fishing. And I'm going to try to relate a few of those to you. The first thing that pops into my mind is patience. You know, patience is certainly a virtue. It's hard to develop patience. It takes time, it takes years, but you know, when we're young, we all want things to happen immediately. We want to go out and be able to catch a lot of big fish in a hurry. And it doesn't always happen that way. There's days when it takes a lot of hard work, and you have to be willing to wait and work, and that's what develops patience, working hard at it and keeping a good open mind and keep fishing. Something else that's real important to me is persistence. You've got to work hard at being a good angler. You have to be willing to go out and be persistent. You have to be persistent about learning how to use your tackle. You have to be persistent about using certain types of lures. You have to practice with it until you get where you're good at it. And when you get on a school of fish or get on an area where you think there's some fish, you have to just bow up and keep working hard at it and be persistent, you know, persist in working and trying to catch those fish. Confidence is just an extremely important factor in bass fishing. You know, building your own self-confidence. It's hard to do, but the way you build self-confidence is going out and being successful, and going out on a practice day and developing a pattern and catching several fish, and being confident that you can go into the next day in the tournament competition and being able to catch those fish. Or if you're just fishing for fun, you go out one day and you get on a pattern and you're learning to catch them on a buzz bait, for instance. And you go out the next day and you catch them again. That builds your self-confidence. Some people think that being a good fisherman is being cocky, but it's really not. Total self-confidence in your own ability is not cockiness. It's just being able to go out there and believe in yourself, knowing that you're going to be able to go out and make it happen. And you need to develop that to become a better angler. Versatility is also an important factor in bass fishing. You know, I've always been tried to be a versatile angler in my fishing. I love to fish all different kinds of lures.
Oh, right there by that tree. Golly, look at the size of that bass.
Oh, that's what this skinny water bass fishing is all about. Oh, you're a pretty thing, yes you are. You know, maybe you're catching them real good on a jig, and you just know tomorrow you're going to go back out and catch them again on that jig, but something changes, and they don't want that jig anymore. They want something else. So it's very important to be able to fish a lot of different types of lures in a lot of different types of ways. And it's important to fish different types of water. You know, I was fortunate enough to grow up on Table Rock Lake and fish there all my life, and it's a diverse fishery. It's got a lot of very deep clear water. It's got a lot of feeder creeks that come into it with off-colored water. So I learned to fish deep clear water, and also learned to fish off-colored dirty water, shallow. I think it's just important to be a diverse angler and to be versatile in your approach, and that way you're going to have a lot more successful days on the water than not. Along with being versatile, you need to be open-minded in your approach. I've always tried to learn something from anyone I get in a boat with. The important thing is never quit learning. You can never fully acquire all the knowledge that you want to acquire about anything, but especially about bass fishing as far as I'm concerned. You know, I've never been able to get it all. Now, you may go with somebody that's, maybe he's not as accomplished as you are, but he may do one little thing during the day that will trip your trigger and help you catch another bass someday, somewhere along the line. Somebody else always knows something that you don't. I like to think that one of the most important things in fishing is focus, concentration and focus. You know, when you're out fishing, there's so many variables and so many things going on around you that can affect your concentration and focus. Try and learn to minimize that. You want to just focus all those things out and concentrate solely on the task ahead of you, whether it be reeling in that spinnerbait or fishing that jig or worm slow on the bottom, waiting for that one big strike. Learn to focus. It's just going to be very important in your fishing.
Stacy King has had a career that stretched over many decades. One of my first memories of Stacy was actually at a fishing show near my home my family and I were at, and he had been there giving a seminar. He needed a ride to get back to the airport, so we offered to take him. And we got to spend, 15 or 20 minutes in the car just talking to someone who's made their living fishing for about 45 years or so at that time. So it was really an eye-opening experience and something that I learned a lot that day as to how a professional angler makes their living. And it truly made an impact on me as a young angler and an aspiring professional angler at that point in time.
Observation is really important to me. Observing the world around you. Whether it be when you're on the water and you're watching a blue heron on the bank fishing for minnows, that's going to tell you that the animals are active. He's trying to catch a bait fish coming along there, and there's probably a bass out in the water that's waiting to catch that same bait fish. And maybe you can go over there and make a cast in that area and catch that bass. Or if you look across the lake and you see a big bunch of shad coming up on top, they're active. So it's being able to focus on the world around you and see the movement, and it's not only the fishing aspect of it, it's just the day. You watch the sky, you watch the clouds, you watch the changes, you watch the sun as it goes down, and all those things together make for a successful day. Bass fishing has always been so special to me because it's such a challenge. You may go out and you may catch them the same way for 3 or 4 days in a row, but more than likely they're going to start to change. There's a seasonal progression in bass fishing. There's so much to learn about it. And it's like I've said before, you just can't ever get all the knowledge and all the information about bass fishing. No matter how much you study it, how much you learn from other people or whatever source that you're looking at, you can't get it all. And that's what's special about it. I just love the challenge of going out and trying to figure out how to catch a bass. Bass fishing has progressed so much since I started, and really in the last 20 or 30 years, it's just amazing the changes that we've seen in tackle, equipment, and the fisheries themselves. My 6-year-old grandson's eat up with bass fishing. I'd like to see him be able to enjoy the same types of fishing situations. So I hope that we can maintain our fisheries and even enhance them in the future and make them better so that the young folks coming along can have the opportunities that I've had. One of the things I enjoy most right now in my fishing is fishing with my 6-year-old grandson. You know, he just eats it up. I tell you, he's a little guy, but he's got a little spinning rod that he can catch those bass on, and it just thrills me to death to see him hook a big old smallmouth. That smallmouth will pull that rod down on the side of the boat, and I'll say, "Get that rod up, boy, get it up." It fish is so strong he can't get it up, but he'll land those big old bass, and he's been to a lot of tournament weigh-ins with me, and he loves to come up on stage with me when I go up to weigh my fish, and I think he feels a little bit of that when I take a picture of him with a fish. I like for people to think about me as someone who really enjoyed what they did. And I'd like for people to remember me as a straight shooter, and I think that the people I've met in my career have been the most important thing to me. And I'd like for people to look back on me and think that I was a good people person. I recently, was diagnosed. I don't know if I can do this or not. I've got a Facebook page that has become pretty popular, with a lot of fishermen across the country and even across the world. I've gotten messages from people in other countries, and it's been real exciting to me. And I recently was diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma, and I'm going through treatment right now. And the outpouring of prayer, just general goodwill thoughts from people all over the world has just been amazing. It's just hard for me to fathom. It just shows you that a lot of us are bound together by a thread called fishing, which is really interesting to me, that there's so many people that are interested in the same things I am, and they also are looking out for me, and I really appreciate it.
Bass School 101 may be basic information, but when it's coming from a guy who's won the Angler of the Year 7 times, we should all listen. Here comes Bass School 101.
Side imaging is a great tool, and one of the best ways to learn about it is to actually go through and look at something like this bridge right here and drive by it and see what it looks like on your depth finder screen. The biggest thing with side imaging is most people want to look at too much. You think, hey, I want to be able to scan 300 feet. Well, to get the best detailed picture, especially on subtle structure that holds bass, you want to look as close as you can. So in shallower water especially, you may only want to look out to the sides left and right 30 feet. In deep water, most of the time I try not to ever go beyond 75 feet because the image of what you're seeing, you lose a lot of detail if you're looking for subtle things. This bridge right here, we're gonna look at it right at around a 50-foot scale, and you're gonna be able to see. You can see that it's 20 feet long, it's got a couple of indentations in it, and you'll see how it looks on the screen to know that when you're out there on a flat and you actually side image a brush pile or a stump, to see that, hey, that little bitty speck on the screen is probably a lot bigger than you think. So let's do that right now. So right now we're coming up to this bridge, and on my left on the screen, I can start to see the riprap corner come to it. And as we go by, we're gonna see that exact bridge piling on the screen. You're gonna see the little angled corner, the indentations. It's gonna draw it all exactly as it is. And that's the beauty of side image, is you get a detailed picture of exactly what's on the bottom. Side imaging is a great tool because it shows you the exact shape, and you can see the height of objects on the bottom. So subtle things like an old rotted out brush pile, they're not going to show up as big objects that have a large shadow to them. The best way to learn how to use side imaging is to go to a place like this where you can go by a bridge, a road bed, a concrete boat ramp that has curbs on the sides, a standing timber, a cedar tree, and then a place like Table Rock like this water's so clear that I can go down the bank
side image through an area and then go back and look and see, because the water's 12 to 15 foot of clarity. So I can really get a good idea of exactly how my unit shows these objects on the screen, and that'll help me when I'm looking for structure.
Hey, here's a fast fact for you. This Nitro Z9 has as much storage as you're gonna find in a bass boat. But even with all this storage, I really like to take advantage of tips that will help me have more room. What I like to do with my spinnerbaits, I keep everything in all different sizes with this box in my truck or in my garage. It's got 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce, 3/8, everything you could imagine. And with these small boxes, keeping them in my boat, I can keep a 1/4 ounce, 3/8, 1/2 ounce, whatever size spinnerbait I want. You know, we may go to some lakes where I may not need this 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, so I can leave it out.
Welcome to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. We're inside Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World. We've got an awesome show for you today. Hit record, here we go. Today, 7-time Angler of the Year, Kevin Van Dam, has a vast knowledge of spinnerbaits, especially slow rolling them. Today, he's rolling through the treetops on In Depth. Then, understanding what a transition zone or bank is crucial when you're trying to develop a pattern on any body of water. I'm going to break it down for you today in Bass School 101. But first, there's none better than Mr. Stacy King when it comes to tackling those clear water techniques. A few tips to clearly make a difference in fishing in 5.
Here's 5 minutes of tips on how to catch clear water bass. We are faced with one of the toughest scenarios in bass fishing today. The water's extremely clear out here. In some places you can see the bottom in 20 foot plus, and look at the sky. There's not a cloud in it. It's just extremely bright and clear. So it's a tough situation, but you certainly don't want to be intimidated by it, because there's times that you can catch fish in a situation like this. And I'm going to show you a few tips and techniques on how I think you can do it. There he is. Oh, that feels like a nice one. Big old spot now. Big old fat one there, boy. You can see that little critter's eating good. Look at the belly on him. I'll release him back. It's clear water with little or no wind, and that means small baits. I'm talking about downsizing my lures. Here's some of my favorites. I like these little boot tail grubs. Catch a lot of fish on them. Of course, little jigs with a twin tail trailer, they're real effective. Sometimes I'll take a French fry and put a jig head on that. I love the little finesse worms with the jig head, just an open hook. And the little tubes, you've all seen me fish the Bass Pro teaser tube before. That's just a great little tool. It looks like a crawdad in the water. And here's something that's pretty cool. It's a Charlie Brewer slider head. This is about an 1/8 ounce with a little finesse worm on it. You can carry that through any kind of brush, and it's really an effective little tool for catching bass with a small worm. Fish. Come on up. Nice one there. Look at him with him. There's his buddy swimming along with him. All right, come in here. That's a big old spot there. Oh man, he got away from me. Come in. Gotcha. I mean, that is one big old fat spot. It's amazing how those fish can hide in clear water. I've had a lot of scenarios over the years where I'd be looking out there and see the bottom everywhere and not see a fish in it, be reeling a spinnerbait in or a finesse bait in, and one had just come from nowhere and get it. He was hiding by a rock out there, and they blend in so well. that they're there and you just don't know it. My personal favorite reel is a 5:2-to-1 gear ratio. And this is a Johnny Moore Signature Series 20 reel. It's light and compact, but I can cast it real good. It holds a lot of line. The gear ratio on it is 5:2-to-1, and that's what I like on a spinning reel. My rod is a 7.2 medium light spinning rod. It's real soft on the tip, but it's got a lot of backbone. I can cast a long way with it, work the baits good, and still get a good hook set. Here's a great tip for fishing clear water. Cast as far as you can put it out there. Get it away from the boat. I tell you what, a lot of times when it's gin clear like it is right now, I won't ever catch a fish close to the boat. So I'll throw extremely long cast, I'll get the bite in the first third, and then I bring it in real quick, make another cast. It's real critical to use low stretch line when you're making those long casts like this. You know, I like 6-pound test fluorocarbon. I don't think you can beat it. Now I'm using a 10-pound test braid with about a 7-foot 6-pound test fluorocarbon leader, but 6-pound test fluorocarbon will work good too because it's low stretch and you can get a good hook set way out there. Ooh, baby. That one's got a little pull to him. Small mule, heading for China. Come up here. There we go. Boy, isn't she pretty? Look at that gold and brown. I mean, they are beautiful. All right, I'm gonna release you back, baby. When you're coming up on a point, you want to be scoping the water out ahead of you. And you can see that shallow water. It's kind of yellow out there, and you watch to where it comes out and drops off into the blue water. That's where the break is, and that's where these bass are going to be. They use that depth where that breaks off as cover, and they'll lay out there just at the point where you can't see the bottom, and that's where they're going to be. So as I move around this point, I'm going to be targeting that yellow-blue line where that breaks off. Get it, pretty big old largemouth. Yes, sir. How about that? Isn't that a pretty thing? Been catching all 3 species today. Largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass. Lots of them. Maybe I'll get to meet up with you again someday. Here's how I work that break line. I'll stay parallel with it and I'll cast right down the break line, work my bait back, and then sometimes I'll pull out into deeper water, throw shallow, and work it across there, especially if I see a dark spot out there. I'll try to work that bait along the sides of that dark spot. It seems to be that's where those fish are going to be hiding. Don't be afraid to fish clear water. You know, I've had a lot of experience on it, but I tell you what, you need to learn how to fish clear water because there's lots of clear water in the country.
The spinnerbait is so productive and has been for so many years and caught so many fish. But when are you going to slow roll it? Here's KVD's Reveal All in today's In Depth. I absolutely love to throw spinnerbait. You know, for me, it's a lure that I've been fishing my whole life, and I've just had a ton of success with it. You know, spinnerbait's one of those baits that you can fish all times of the year. You can fish it around all types of cover, and you can fish it in any depth zone. It's one of those key lures that you can control the depth and fish it anywhere in the water column, and it flat catches them. And I just started to slow it down and let it flutter. One of the things I love about a spinnerbait is the versatility of it. You can, fish it just about anywhere, at any depth, at any speed. It's just a perfect lure when you have bass that are in all parts of the water column. And a lot of times what I like to do is really concentrate on that mid-depth zone. So, some of these deeper ditches and things like that can be great places to catch them too. Where I'm fishing at right now, back in this oxbow off the river, it's one of those places that has got a lot of diversity. They dug this levee out of here, and so it's got a ditch along the bank, and it's got a deeper edge, and it's hot summertime, and these fish are not up on the bank at all. I mean, there's no current here. They're not relating to the bottom, they're relating to the shad, and I can kind of slow roll that spinnerbait through the water column and trigger them to bite. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, is just kind of fishing the edge of this ditch, some of this isolated cover that's along it, and try to get that bait that's in the zone where the fish are hanging. They're not uptight on the bottom, they're just kind of swimming around, and they're really concentrated on the bait more than anything. So, one of the things when bass
start relating to off the bank type structure, you know, to the channel drops and to the ledges and things like that, they'll suspend, and you know, they're going to be focused on bait, and that's the reason they're doing it, is because shad are in the area, and you got to have a lure that you can fish through the middle of the water column, and that's where slow roll on a spinnerbait is just absolutely lights out. Look at there. That's why you always throw that trailer hook. I mean, he just bit it short. I never touched him with the main hook. I wouldn't have caught him. But yeah, I'm just slow rolling that spinnerbait. You know, the great thing about this bait is it's hard to beat it as a shad imitator. You know, I've got a pearl white skirt on there, big willow blade on there. It's creating a lot of vibration. This water's stained. You know, it's perfect. One of my favorites in stained water is just a, you know, a white skirt like that with a silver and gold blade. I'm just slow rolling that bait through the water column, just over the top of that ledge. You know, they're not related to the bottom. They're up off the, you know, up off the bottom. They're looking for shad. I've seen 3 or 4 of them bust. So, you know, I think in my mind that this is going to be one of the best ways to catch them. You know, there's a whole lot more to throwing a spinnerbait than just casting it out and reeling it in. You know, you can do that, but I like to really work a spinnerbait. I want to try to figure out ways that I can make bass react to it under any type of conditions. That's a good looking spot there. I mean, big bunch of brush right there. It comes out over the channel edge. I mean, it's 10 foot of water out off the edge of it. Just a perfect place for them to kind of hang and wait for a pot of shad or anything like that this time of year. You know, you got to have that deep water access. And that spinnerbait, I can fish it real slow, and it makes a ton of vibration. Stays right in that zone for a long period of time. Golly, you got it right in the top of that brush top. That's a good one right there. And man, there's just something that these big fish like that, they just can't tolerate about a big spinnerbait coming right over the top of them like that. Put my power pole down there. Come here. It's a nice one. I had him again, that trailer hook. I mean, right there, just through the top of the lip from the outside. I mean, I just kind of worked it real slow over that limb. And so one of the things that I like to do when I'm fishing a spinnerbait or slow rolling a spinnerbait is always fish it over the top of some cover. One of my favorite things is around laydowns, you know, brush tops and things like that. You get that spinnerbait with that blade thumping, going over the top of a brush pile or a laydown like that, they just can't handle it. Nice one. These fish are out here chasing shad. You know, the biggest thing when you're slow rolling a spinnerbait is to choose a bait that matches the depth that you're fishing. You know, right now I'm really fishing 5 to 10 foot of water, so a half-ounce spinnerbait like this with a Colorado willow combination, you know, that Colorado blade pushes a lot of water, gives a lot of lift and a lot of vibration, helps me slow that bait down. That big number 5 willow, same thing, you know, a lot of flash, a lot of vibration. It allows me to fish it really efficiently in 5 to up to 10 foot of water. One of the things that has been a real advantage to me is these skirts like this that have the built-in tail or the built-in trailer right into the skirt itself. It adds a lot of action to it, and it doesn't affect the way that the bait runs. That's creating a big bulky profile, and in really dirty water, that's what I want. I want a bigger profile, make it easier for the fish to see the bait. You know, today I wanted to have a trailer hook on there, and I wanted that tail just to cover that trailer hook. So, you know, basically what I did is I put my trailer hook on, and this is how you always want to rig a trailer hook. Put that on there, and then I'm going to put my little keeper on after the fact so that that trailer hook can swing freely. So no matter what I'm doing with the spinnerbait, if I'm letting it fall or if I'm ripping it up over a limb, that hook is going to be following right behind the back of the bait, right in that tail, right in that trailer. I want the bass, if he bites that skirt, if he touches that skirt, to get that hook. So that's how I'm going to trim it. So I'm just going to get my scissors. I'm going to hold that tail down like that and just trim the ends. So now I've got this bait where the tail is just covering the trailer hook, gives it enough extra action there so that when I drop that bait or flare it, It's got some flair to it, just like the tail of a shad. So, and if he bites it short, I'm going to get him with that trailer hook. Another really important thing when you're fishing a spinnerbait and you're slow rolling it, you know, I've got this trailer hook on there. And if you just reel that spinnerbait through a piece of cover, say you're fishing a big laydown, and you just reel it at the same speed when you're bumping those limbs, a lot of times that spinnerbait's gonna roll over and the trailer hook will catch. So what I try to do is when I feel it bump something, a lot of times you can feel the line over the limb first. Right when it comes to that object, speed up the retrieve. Just kind of turn the handle real fast. And what that does is that keeps the spinnerbait, instead of just going slow and rolling over and hooking that hook, it keeps that spinnerbait straight up and down. So it'll hit the limb, and it'll clear both of your hooks, and you're not gonna get hung up that way. And the other thing is it flares the spinnerbait, flares the skirt, flares the blades, bangs into that limb, and it's gonna trigger a lot of bass to bite. Man, I was just letting it fall. Oh, that's a good one too. That's a nice one. You know, one of the things, I was just letting that bait flutter down. And a lot of what I'm doing right now is basically the same as you do fishing a jig or, you know, a worm or something like that with a spinnerbait. Another nice one. Trailer hook again. Let him go. The number one thing, you know, compared to fishing a worm or a jig, is you always want to let a spinnerbait fall with tension on your line. You know, with a worm or a jig, I always like it to fall slack line. So I want it to swing towards me like a pendulum and keep that blade turning so you can feel what's going on all the time. So let me show you that real quick, because this is a critical aspect to it. So I'm gonna take out here, make a cast. As soon as it hits, I'm gonna let that bait sink, but I've got tension on my line. I've just turned the handle enough. I can feel that, you know, as that bait's sinking. When it hits the bottom, I'm gonna hop it up and then start my retrieve. The whole time you're just kind of letting that bait rise and fall, but the blades are always turning, you're always keeping tension on the line, and that way you know what's going on with that lure, and it's right in the top of the cover and right in the strike zone. You know, one of the things that I love about, you know, fishing a spinnerbait like this, you don't have to go to light tackle. I mean, even if I'm fishing a crystal clear lake, man, that's a good one right there. Let him go. You know, I could use big equipment. You know, I'm using 20-pound test fluorocarbon. You know, I'm using a heavy action, medium heavy action rod, you know, a fairly high speed reel so I can slow that down. I mean, even, you know, even in crystal clear water, you can do that. I'm using fluorocarbon. They don't, the fish aren't gonna see that, and it just really allows you great feel. You know, when you match that heavy fluorocarbon with a graphite rod, you can feel everything that spinnerbait's doing when you slow it down like that. You know, when I saw the conditions, I immediately thought in my mind that slow rolling a spinnerbait would be a really good choice. You know, I mean, the fish were set up on these deeper trees. They were set up on the creek channel edge. And they were feeding on shad. You had to have something that moved slow, displaced a lot of water, and imitated a shad. And slow rolling that big spinnerbait was the perfect medicine. I got him both hooks from the outside in. Kind of crazy. I mean, he was just trying to kill it. I was letting that bait flutter down, and he was just trying to kill it, and I got him through the top of the nose. Good solid fish. You know, spinnerbait is just a great tool to fish that mid-level column, especially when the bass are really targeting bait fish like this. So, you know, next time you see a situation like this, tie on a spinnerbait, slow roll it through that cover, use a couple of the pointers we tried here, and I think you're gonna catch a lot more bass. It's one of my favorite lures and one of my favorite techniques.
Here's a fast fact for you. When choosing a spinnerbait, the color of the water is very, very important. For the dirtiest water I'm going to fish, I'm going to go with the double Colorado version. For water that's got some stain to it, that's when I'm going to pick a tandem blade with a Colorado and a Willa on the back. For really clear water, that's when you want to go with a double Willa. And you can kind of vary those a little bit, but that's my general selection. White and chartreuse and white colors are really hard to beat, and that's a fact.
Transition banks are a big key when you're breaking down any body of water. Today, I'm going to try to help you identify 3 different types and what they look like in Bass School 101. I'd like to explain what a transition zone is. It's anywhere on a body of water that I have a change in rock is what I'm talking about. And right here's a prime example. I've got big ledge rock that transitions to chunk rock. This would be a prime place for me to come in the spring. It's really deep right here. A channel swings in. A prime place for me to come in the spring and jerk a jerkbait or crank a crankbait really fast. And it's a spot where a fish can go from, you know, big rock to little rock without having to move very far at all. It's right there where they meet. That's the transition. I'm gonna try to show you a few more examples of some here on this body of water. Another prime example of a great transition. I've got a big monster channel swing bluff wall, super vertical, transitions to fist-sized rock, super flat. So those fish, in the matter of just 50 feet, they can go from very vertical holding cover to very flat holding cover. Wintertime, great spot for a fish to come up here and warm up in this shallow flat. Gets cold, they pull right back out deep. Another great jerkbait spot. Summertime, you can get out here where it's flat, Carolina rig 'em, football jig 'em, but a prime example of a great transition right there. Oh man, he come, oh, that's a big one. Yeah, buddy. Oh, man. Here's the last transition I want to show you. It's chunk rock to pea gravel, a prime example right there. Those fish can go from that chunk rock right to that pea gravel and start spawning. A great one in the spring when they're spawning. Also in the fall, they'll get up on those flat pea gravel points and you can catch them on a topwater. Now you just have to figure out which transition zones in a creek are holding them. Sometimes it's going to be at the mouth, sometimes it's going to be in the middle, sometimes it's going to be in the back. Now that you know the transitions, figure out which section of that creek they're using them.